Hey,
Hey,
what's up, everyone?
what's up?
Welcome, one and all, to Timeless Gamer, where the games and gamers grow older, but our gaming experiences will forever remain timeless. Your gaming podcast show brought to you by Pinoy Retro Gaming, and we are now live in Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. And for all of our archive videos that, for some reason, you still haven't witnessed, that's fine. You can just go to our YouTube channel, which is Timeless Gamer PRG, and by also going to the Pinoy Retro Gaming Facebook page, you can also listen to us by going to Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Samsung Podcast, Podcast Index, Listen Notes, Pandora, TuneIn, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, Deezer. So all of that great stuff. And for this episode, guys, we are. Oh, before we do our before we proceed, introduce giving the synopsis of today's episode. Previously on Timeless Gamer, we talked about the gaming mascots of the gaming industry, past and present. So all of you Mario fans and Sonic fans, Master Chief fans, yeah, go to go to that episode, and we shared our thoughts and opinions regarding those mascots, some of their history as well, and the impact that they left in the gaming industry. Not all of the mascots were focused on. Some of the notable few, of course. And for this episode, we have Sir Dan to thank for. This is going to be our Sega Master
Master
System
System.
versus the Nintendo Entertainment System. Both systems during the 8-bit era of the early and mid 80s. And speaking of which, introductions of our panel for tonight. We got all the way from the UK, Sir Dan.
Hmm.
How doing? All right, everyone.
Good, good.
All right. Thank you, Sir Dan. And across the Atlantic Sea, from the land of New Jersey, we got Sir Joe.
Hey, it's great to see
Hey.
everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. Welcome to the newest episode of Timeless Gamer Podcast.
And the beast from the east, Sir Seabert Retro Game.
Yes. Hello, guys. Good evening. I'm gonna be representing Nest, so I'm gonna be needing help from all our Filipino comrades who's watching right now.
Hmm.
All right.
And remember, Siebert isn't just the beauty. He isn't just the beast. He's also the beauty. There you go.
and all and our beau from Cebu, Sir Juan DeMarcus.
Hmm.
Well, good day, everyone. Juan De Marcos of 123 Go. How's everyone?
All right. Thank you, Sir JDM. And a very special Timeless Gamer welcome. He's been one of our avid viewers for for the last few episodes. Coming from London, we extend our very much appreciation and welcome to Sir Viraj.
Thank you
Yes.
for having me. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yep, how you guys doing? We're all good. We're all ready to get cracking, right? So I've been looking forward to this as well, and it's an honour for you to let me on this show. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Thank you.
And maybe we'll use this opportunity to know a little bit more about Sir Viraj. So Sir Viraj, can you tell us more about your gaming background?
Oof. For me, gaming started in the 90s. I mean, I was born in the middle of the 80s, but bang splat in the middle of it. And as a youngster, it was really, to be blunt with you, my father had an Atari 2600. I played it for a bit, and yes, it was an interesting novelty for the time, but it isn't something that a young 5-year-old can really get into. And it was 5 when I started playing video games. My father then later got me and this touches on this episode, a Nintendo Entertainment System. Okay, and I didn't get on with it because one, my hands might have been a bit too small for this controller. You know, it really did. It pinched into my little hands. It was uncomfortable, and I hated Duck Hunt because I just wanted to kill the dog because I couldn't shoot the duck and it was laughing at me. The dog would laugh at me.
Everybody
So I
wanted to kill the dog,
but
Viraj.
I couldn't do it. And he was laughing at me, so I thought no. And then I didn't get on with it. So my father actually returned the NES, and he got me this new console called the SEGA Mega Drive. Okay, and that's where things got real. And it was with it was the invention of Sonic the Hedgehog that got me into wanting to play video games. It was a very good game for a young person, a 5-year-old, okay, to get into. And all the buttons are jump. It's just a directional pad, and you just have to direct Sonic until the end of the game. You know, and it's quite a really well-made platformer for its time. A simple platformer, but that's what started me loving video games from that point, and the Sega Mega Drive, which is my favorite retro gaming console of all time. And since then, you know, the rest is history. You know, I had the SNES as well, and PlayStation followed, and onwards until what we have today. So yeah, that's a summary of me for the fundamental part.
Right. So we invited Sir Viraj here for this particular episode because we want somebody who knows more about the Sega Master System.
Oh,
And with all due respect to all of you Filipinos there, yes, we grew up with the Famicom, but there are also places, there are other locations in the world
here we
where
go.
the Master System reigns supreme.
Yes.
And it's not fair to say that we're not just because we didn't grow up with the Master System doesn't necessarily mean we should dismiss it, right? And
Very
for
true.
some for some of the kids back in the 80s, this was their life as much as the Famicom, the NES uh, were a major part of our lives growing up. The purpose of this episode is to educate and spread awareness on how the Sega Master System fared with the NES.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure, of course, we all know what's happened That's a given. But
Mm.
by having Sir Viraj here and Sir Dan representing the blue brand, we might know something.
Yeah.
We might know something about the Master System
Mhm.
that we were not able to learn back from the days when the Famicom and the NES were was pretty much everything.
Mhm.
So hopefully this show will educate us. You know.
Mhm.
So
All right.
we will give it now to Sir Joel, who is going to be the main referee of this bout. Scheduled
Okay.
for one fall.
All right, let's get ready to rumble. All right. The idea today, like Josh says, is that our audience is comprised mainly of Filipinos from the Philippines and abroad. And the thing about us Filipinos is that we grew up with the Japanese Famicom slash NES because it was the big thing that was available in the Philippines back then. We had basically no idea that there were any alternatives, and that is why we are privileged right now to have Dan and Viraj with us to introduce us to what was happening elsewhere in the world and what amazing
Mm.
other things are available now for us retro gamers. So, representing the Sega Master System side is Dan and Viraj. Representing the NES Famicom side would be JDM and Siebert. And
Yeah.
Joe and I are going to be placing bets against each other to see who's gonna knock each other, who's gonna knock the
Oof.
other one first out. Okay.
I just noticed that
Hmm,
Sir Viraj and Sir Dan are wearing their
they're blues.
colors,
Yeah.
and I, I just realized that I was wearing red and they're
Just now.
wearing blue, and you
Is
guys
it?
are wearing like a
Yeah.
very
Of
like
course, of course. We fly the
neutral
color.
colors.
Yeah, fly the
Yeah.
colors, JDM, because
Like
the
the
idea
colours.
is that I mean,
Uh,
I'm wearing a blue jacket, but my main color right now is black. I'm very neutral. I'm the spectator in this whole thing,
okay.
and of course the
I'm actually also neutral, so I was
oh
just
come
there to
on,
be
Seabird.
part of the fans.
Well, first things first, though, let's say hi to everybody in the chat because we here in Timeless Gamer are very, very concerned about not just us in the panel tossing out our facts and opinions. We also love our audience. We'd like to say
Mm.
hi to Paulo de la Chica, Nintendo for Life. There you go. That's already the first shot, first
Yeah.
volley in the war. And Francis Baja says,
Oof.
I never played any Sega consoles in my whole life. Oh,
Ugh.
there goes, there goes another shot.
Yeah.
Marlon Hurtado Eliscupides, and of course Miss Charlene Alisa San Agustin, who sadly could not make it to today's episode because she is very busy with her studies. But we send out our prayers for you, Miss Charlene. Good luck on the exams,
Mm.
and of course Gomer Kaasi, Gomer of Jinko's Gaming Hub. Very very happy that you're here, and James Wheatley. Looking forward to this one. Very good. So shots have been fired across the bow already,
Mm.
guys. Let's begin with a little bit of history then. Okay, I guess the best person to start it off would be our special guest today, Viraj. Give us a little bit
All
of a
right.
background on what the Sega Master System is and what it was all about back then.
All right. So I think let's start at the very beginning of Sega. I
A
think
very good
most
place to
people.
start. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, I say Sega. I say Sega when it became known as Sega CSK. Okay, which is the Sega
Mm,
that we knew and love. And
mm,
the story actually begins in 1983 when Sega created their first home console, which wasn't actually the Master System. For us in the West, it was the Master System. It was the Sega SG-1000.
mm.
And that was launched in 1983, July 15th. The same date that Nintendo's Famicom was released, which is a little mini replica here that I have
Ah,
here,
love that
which
one.
is
Love the
which is all
Famicom.
it's all wired in.
Mm.
That was the SG-1000. I'm hope just a bit of note here. I hope Sega do make an SG-1000 mini, but that's another
Oh,
story.
let's hope so.
Um,
Let's hope so.
but they created this console, and it was just something that they wanted to make because their arcade business wasn't doing as well as it could have done. They thought, let's try and venture into the home console market.
Hmm.
And the target for that device was to sell about 100,000 units. It wasn't as powerful as the Famicom, to be honest. It was a slightly enhanced version of the Atari 2600 hardware at the time. It's better than Atari 2600, but not quite as advanced as a Famicom. Just to be clear about it. In in time, Sega, they did well with it. Was it successful? As far as Sega were concerned, it was, because it sold 100,000 units, and that was their target. They weren't really looking to compete with Nintendo at the time, even though the system, it was a coincidence that both systems launched on the same day. The system then went through a redesign the following years. You know, the controllers weren't that great on the SG-1000. They thought, let's have detachable controllers. You know, let's have, and it did have like a cartridge-based system, but they launched the card system on the Mark II model, the SG-1000 Mark II in '84. And that did reasonably okay, but it wasn't successful because it was still the same hardware as an SG-1000. It was just redesigned. It was only in 1985 where they thought, right, we need to compete with Nintendo now. Let's create the SEGA Mark III. That's what they called it, SG-1000 Mark III. It was known as the Mark III. And that is where the story of the Master System really begins. In 1985, when they launched the SEGA Mark III. That's actually the name of the Master System in Japan before they rebranded it Master System in 1987 and had another relaunch of it. But because there was a Master System launched in Japan, and the Master System is known as Mark IV hardware. And what Sega were trying to do at the time was bring their arcade technology at home. That was always their goal from the very beginning. And that's what the run-up to what Mega Drive is. You know, that's what System 16 was. It was getting that arcade technology at home. And, you know, if you're looking at the SG-1000 Mark 1 and 2, that's based on the Sega System 2 hardware, which wasn't 16-bit at the time. And with the Master System, yes, it was 8-bit, even though it had 16-bit buses in it. It was a lot more advanced at the time than what we had. And it was more advanced than the Famicom. It was actually a system that was graphically superior than Famicom. It had a clock speed that ran twice as fast. Okay, so it was actually a better system hardware-wise in terms of the graphical output. Now, it then went on to having a release in the West in '86 in America and '87 in Europe. Now, with
for those of you who are in the audio portion right now, we are showing a little bit of a chart. Pardon for the interruption, Viraj. We're showing a little bit of a chart on our screens, comparing the hardwares of the Nintendo Entertainment System / the Famicom, the Sega Master System, and the Atari. Is that the 7200? Oh no, that's the
7800.
That's 7800.
7600.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. They seem to vary wildly in terms of colors and palette and sprites, but they have, I guess they're kind of running neck and neck, Viraj, right? Anyway, continue, please.
Yes, I mean, it's an interesting observation here that the Atari 7800 and actually the NES used the same processor. It's exactly based on the same MOS, so it's the same sort of thing. Whereas the Master System used a Zilog Z80 processor, which was revolutionary for its time. It was used in so many other products. Even in I believe that the Game Boy Color used a version of that processor. So after that, the Zilog Z80 became a very popular chipset. But going back to the Master System releasing in America in 1986. It launched out there, but by then I think because Nintendo, and I'll let Siebert talk about Nintendo. I've got to give him a chance. I could do both sections if I wanted to, but Nintendo had their dominance. Nintendo launched in '85, a year earlier in America, and they redesigned the Famicom. So this is obviously the Japanese design
version. Yeah.
Now, because the console crash, which happened only in America, well, pretty much only in North America. People weren't buying like consoles because of what Atari were doing in all these clone consoles, which had all these really bad games. I mean, just games for the sake of being games.
Yeah.
And people were just tired of video games. And Nintendo, they created this thing, which basically looks like a VCR. You know, it lifts it up and you have these big cartridges. And there's the Rob robot. So they market it as
there you go. Siebert is showing his modified, customized NES. All right, continue.
So they created this thing to really, you know, they saw a niche in the market and they really wanted to sell this because the Famicom had done very well in Japan, okay, and they thought we just redesign it and we sell this, and it did very well. It was very successful and it had a domination in America. I'd seen like nowhere else. It had a 90% market share throughout its run for a long time.
Okay.
And I think it's because one thing I want to just talk about is the tactics they used with third-party developers and how they'd sign them on to make games exclusively just for them. So when Sega launched their Master System in '86, it was very difficult for them to gain traction with developers. And that was one of the things that they struggled with. And also they had the Master System did struggle in America a lot. And a part of it was Sega's sort of mishandling with the marketing of it because they gave it to a marketing company that didn't really do much with it, didn't really understand it, and that was part of the issue. Now it's a different story when we talk about Europe and how Sega handled the release in Europe. Now, and it's also to do with the NES's blunder in Europe, because Nintendo went to Mattel to get them to market the NES in Europe. Okay, now Mattel's a famous toy company, and they created He-Man and
Barbie,
and so much. So well known. And the first editions of this actually said Mattel version. On it on the first in Europe, the first ones had Mattel version on it. That means nothing. It just means it was the first version, but they didn't market it very well. And because it was going up against people in Europe who were at the time, the market was very different because we didn't have a console crash here. People were happy playing games on the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and all these other microcomputers. We were happy using that, and that was what this was competing against. And when you see this here in Europe, we look at this and we think the people thought this was a toy because it was marketed as a toy. Like, what is this toy? What is this thing? And the cartridges were like this big. I'm like, what is this nonsense? They're like VHS cassettes. This is silly. And then when Sega launched the Master System, you're dealing with like people who really can see the graphical difference, and the graphics from a Master System and a NES, it's day and night. You can see the difference. You can see a difference. Like, you can't say that much with the NES and the Mega Drive, but the difference between the NES and Master, compared to a Master System, the NES just looked really primitive in terms of the graphical output and what it was. And it was using at the time 1983 hardware, 1985 hardware with the Master System. So actually, the Master System was seen as a very popular system, a very desirable system when it came out here, and it lasted a very long time in Europe, all the way until 1996. It was supported.
Really? Oh,
yes, it was supported all the way to 1996 because and you can look at the games library, and that's partially because of Brazil, but the support that came for this was really good. They had a redesign of this in 1990 because the original Master System had a card reader on it that still made it backwards compatible with the SG-1000 Mark II cards and the Mark III cards, and there were Sega cards for the Master System, which was basically games which didn't require that much memory, and they were put into cards. And you have you have other accessories with the first Master System, such as active 3D glasses, so you can play 3D games. You had the Zapper as well, like you did with the NES. But they thought, okay, let's scale this back because this was released in 1990. The Mega Drive had come out in Europe then. This was actually dubbed what I'd like to call the poor man's Mega Drive, because it was being sold it's basically being sold at $49.99, and it was such a budget system.
I'd love to get my hands on one of those now.
So this was such, well, at the time, but it's still at $49.99 in the 1990. Was still a lot of money, but even then, like, this was very popular, and it had a packing game built in. So in some of them, there was Alex Kidd. This one has Sonic the Hedgehog built in. So it was seen as a really good budget system. It's built into the hardware. So when you turn it on, it boots up into that game. Obviously, you got this lovely little. This is the Master System too. It's got the dust cover as well. Covers it from getting dusty, so you don't have to blow on it like you do have with an NES cartridge.
Yeah.
So it already has a built-in game. Alex Kidd.
It has a built-in game already. Okay.
Yeah. So some had Alex Kidd, some had Sonic. It depends on which one you went for, but. This was very successful because what gave Sega the market share advantage here in Europe anyway was okay, yes, it was the success of the Mega Drive, but also this was a really good budget system to play your Sega on, and that pushed Nintendo as well. Nintendo didn't really have a dominance here, but I'm sure it helped in terms of pushing its market share to over 65% in Europe. Throughout the years of 1992, 1993. So that Sega did very well with the Mega Drive here in Europe and the Master System. And the Master System really helped with that. And it was a budget solution for people who couldn't have a Mega Drive. So it had a second life here in Europe because of 1990 with the 16-bit era. The 8-bit stuff was still prominent. And the Master System, unlike the NES, wasn't as jarring to look at. It's not to say that the NES wasn't successful here. It still had its fans. It still does. But the Master System was just more, it sold more and it was more successful here in Europe. But I mean, obviously, I'm sure Sir Siebert here will agree with me that it didn't. What didn't help it was Nintendo's dominance on third-party developers.
There you go.
I'll give you an example. I think what's really interesting is let's talk about Acclaim Entertainment. Now, Acclaim would make games for the Nintendo system, but they found a back door around it, and they created a company called Flying Edge, which is just another name for Acclaim. and they used that to publish games on the Sega system. So there was a way around it, and that's where that's one aspect where Sega struggled. But it's a number of issues with America because of the way it was marketed and how poorly it was handled. And it's only when Sega returned and got their rights back from the company who I forget marketed it on purpose. But it's only when Sega got their rights back in 1990 did the Master System sort of get a bit more success. But that was obviously in America, but it stopped being supported in 1992 in America. So that was the end of that. So
it's quite fascinating, actually, listening to Viraj about how it's kind of like an alternate world for us Filipinos, and for those of us who grew up with Nintendo here in the United States, where across the pond, it's like you this complete other world where Nintendo wasn't the dominant force, and it's like something stepping over there. These people speak the same language as me. I understand what they're saying, but they're doing completely different things. And we're fascinated actually right now listening to how Viraj is describing it, how Dan is going to be putting in his 2 cents on how things looked like back then. And actually, even Viraj even touched on a couple of things that we here in the Philippines really didn't get into, like the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, the ZX Spectrum, the Sinclair, things like that. We're
Europe.
yeah, all Europe, and the way that I think I'd heard someplace also, Viraj, that Sega Master System was huge also in Brazil. You mentioned that earlier.
Brazil.
In the way that has to do with a stroke of genius marketing, and has to do with Sega, because Brazil has a very regulated economy, and when it comes to importing things, there's obviously a lot of tax with Brazil. I don't know if it's the case now, but back then it was. And because they wanted to have control of their own products, they wanted to help their own industry. There was a company called Tectoy, and Sega
They're
worked
still
with
releasing Sega.
and if we're being honest here, the Master System is still being supported to this very day in Brazil. Because
all right, that does it. That does it. I'm taking a trip down to Brazil right now. I'm buying myself a Master System, brand new.
Because it was such a running success, and they actually had their own little mascots. This frog called Sapo Zule. And what they've done is they've actually used his sprite and just basically doctored it into other Sega games to make it successful and popular. But it worked, and Sega were happy doing it because it shifted their brand, it shifted their systems.
Yeah, Dan, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I say Sega Master System still sells around 150,000 units a year in Brazil. So what other console is that amount? You know what I mean? It's probably the main console still in Brazil after 30 odd years. So that's a massive achievement, really.
Yeah,
sweetie, we're booking our next vacation to Brazil. Okay. All right.
And, I mean, you'll probably find their version looking a bit more like this, or a scaled back version of it, because obviously the original Master System was actually very over engineered. You did have you had the 3D technology that went into the card reader. You had it had backwards compatibility, and this one thing I haven't mentioned and nobody ever talks about with Sega, which is up until the Sega Mark V, otherwise known as the Mega Drive, all of their systems were backwards compatible with the one before it. So the Master System, the first edition of it, was backwards compatible with the cards of the Sega Mark II, which is the SG-1000. Yes, obviously we never used the backwards compatibility here in Europe because the Mark II never came out, but it would work. If you were to be one of those people who mail ordered it back then and who was an enthusiast. But yeah, the Master System Model 1 had a lovely design. It actually looked like a serious piece of hardware for us Europeans, whereas the NES actually looked like a toy. And I remember now, so the people that actually got the Americans, Sega of America got Tonka Toys, that was the company to market it, and they didn't have a clue how to market this thing in '88.
Tonka. We know Tonka for the metal, what do you call those? The die-cast metal tractor toys. That's it. That's what we remember them for. Anyway, continue, Viraj.
So Tonka Toys didn't really know what to do in '88 to 1990. They held the rights to this thing, but they didn't know how to market the Master System, and it actually made it worse for the Americans, which is a shame because it was just a terrible mistake. And I think Sega obviously learned from that. They learned a lot from all this exercise. The Master System wasn't as successful as it could have been in America. And there are a number of factors against it. Nintendo's dreadful monopolization tactics by saying to retailers then, hey, if you start selling other people's consoles, we're going to pull out and not give you our NESs because they were the dominant force. And back then, the margins on video games consoles were a lot higher than they are now. They were making a very profitable business then, and obviously Nintendo used these very horrible monopolization, blackmail tactics, and they obviously went to court over this whole thing. But bottom line is, they were the predator back then, and they became a Goliath.
It's really one of the things that I guess it's one of the things that influenced how people had access to both systems here in the Philippines and here in the United States. That was also possible. Well, but then again, the Philippines was a lot of gray markets too. That we in the Philippines were only able to access the stuff that America really marketed a lot of, and I guess in some of I guess let's listen to JDM's side. I guess JDM, were you alive a little bit? Were you alive during that time? I'd say JDM is about the youngest one in our panel right now. What do you remember about that era a little bit?
I was born, I guess, a year later after the release of the Sega Master System, as Sir Biraj said. So I honestly I didn't even know that there was different gaming consoles other than Nintendo. I only saw the Sega Mega Drive in 1995 because I had a cousin who has this Mega Drive at home, so it was like a mind blowing experience because I only had a Famicom at home. So it was like, what I why didn't I heard of this game or this console? So I don't really have any like recollection of seeing it in from our neighbors or something like that. And I only saw it later during my around when I was 8 or 9 when I finally had my access to the internet and I took a look at photos of what was the console, and then I discovered the Master System.
There you go. I'd say the common Filipino experience was walking into the one of our super malls, going into seeing kiosks right in the middle of the hallways, and then being able to pick out a lot of games. Of course, sailing the high seas type of games, and a lot of Famicom stuff, Japanese Famicom stuff that you would be able to pick out. But this alternate universe that we're looking at right now through Viraj and Dan's eyes is quite fascinating, especially the fact that they've touched on the early part of the console wars, which we really went into detail of in the previous episode here in Timeless Gamer. If you guys want, you can check out our archives. We had an amazing discussion about the console wars back then, and Viraj really touched on how the industry really got shook up by Sega and Nintendo way back when. Now, that was a good introduction, Viraj, as to how the hardware specs measured up against each other. I'm more curious right now about the comparisons, shall we say?
Okay.
Let's touch on the platform, the platform software, and Viraj already mentioned this a moment ago about how the color palettes in the Sega Master System seem to be a little bit more vibrant than in the Famicom, and I think we saw that on the introduction video that Joe kindly provided earlier. Honestly, it was quite.
To be honest, Sir Joel, when I was doing the intro video, the difference between there are a few games that were ported for both systems.
Yes.
And the difference between the two were night and day. And I'm like, the Sega Master System in terms of video and animation really blew off. And
Yeah.
and watching Aladdin for the Master System, watching
Mhm.
Lion King for the Master System, like you
Mhm.
can really see the fluidity of their movement in
Looking at
comparison with
Shinobi.
Well,
in comparison with the other with the NES counterparts. They
Mm-mm.
a little bit more jarry and blocky
I,
in
I
their
guess
movement.
you have to,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
have to
Sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead, Rush.
you have to be fair when making these comparisons. Okay,
Mm.
so Aladdin actually had. I have Aladdin on the Master System, so I know about this.
Okay.
It had a very late release on the Master System. It was in 1994. When did
Mm.
Aladdin? I mean, Aladdin came out a good few years before that, 1992.
Yeah,
92, if I remember correctly.
Right,
Yes.
that's
Mhm.
correct. Now, the NES version of Aladdin is that's a scaled down weak port of the Mega Drive version, and I don't know why it was
Mm.
just. And if you actually look at the NES one, I can't play. It's ugly. It's
Mm.
hideous. It's
Yeah.
awful.
that,
I did
that's
not
what
play that version.
that's what I'm
You
saying
play the
here, Sir
Sega.
Brad.
You play the
Mm.
Sega Mega Drive version.
They had more time to perfect
Oh,
with the
there's
Master
that. Yeah.
System because they had more
Yes.
time. They had more
Well,
time to program it.
I wouldn't say they had more time. It's just that Sega really put a lot of their. They worked with Virgin Games at the time. They had a very good
Oh, version
relationship.
games. Yes. Mhm.
And
Mm.
that game on the Mega Drive should not have been that good because they had less than 6 months to make it, and
Mm.
they really did. I mean, it didn't deserve to be as good as it was, but the Mega Drive version of Aladdin is the best of
But
that
in
era.
fairness
Mega
with
Drive. The
in
Mega
fairness with
Drive
the
version
Master System,
nailed
in
it.
fairness with the Master System, though, they really pushed on how the Master System can really
Yes,
pull it off
and
if they really tried,
the music on
Mm.
the
right?
Master System, like the rendition of A Whole New World on the Master
Mm.
System version of Aladdin, is beautiful. Okay,
Mm.
they did a good job with the programmable sound generator on that Master System version, and it was made by Sim. I believe it was Sims who made it, and it actually, out of all the Aladdin games, it actually follows the story of the movie the best. The
I
Master System
know,
version.
I know, I know. Because I'm like because I was watching the YouTube walkthrough of Aladdin
Mm,
for the Master System. They play it out like the movie.
mm,
So
mm.
Mm.
they will show some cut scenes,
Yeah.
especially when Aladdin first met
Mm,
Jasmine when
Mhm.
they were
yeah.
on the rooftop, and then when he was taken to Jafar, like they really stopped the game to tell a story,
Mm,
like like it was in the movie. So
Mhm.
as a player, you're like, okay, I'm playing the game,
Mm.
and I'm also being retold this
The story of the
90s
movie.
no,
movies from way back then, right?
it's an immersive experience. It's an immersive
It's
Mm.
experience.
genius actually. I like it
Mm,
personally. I like it.
yeah.
For all of you guys down there in the chat, check check out Aladdin for the Sega Master System.
Mm,
If you don't even play it,
yeah.
just watch the playthrough.
No, no,
Uh,
Mhm.
no,
you'll be
play it.
surprised.
Play
Play
it.
it.
It's a
Play it.
good-
Viraj says
Play it,
play
play
it.
it, play it,
Play
play it.
that game.
You
It's
know
a
what?
good game.
Actually, Sir Viraj, it kind of reminds me of Prince of Persia, Sir Joel.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
There
got that
you go. I
animation. It's
love
got that
Prince of
animation.
Persia.
Yeah,
Yes. Mm.
it's got that animation feel to
Because
it.
technically speaking,
And
it is Aladdin. I
it's
mean, Middle East, yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's a
just
shame
got.
because
Sorry.
You
it's
were
a shame
saying that.
go on, I'll say quickly. It's a
Oh,
shame
go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
Americans never got Aladdin in 1994. It was discontinued at that point. So Americans play Aladdin on the Master System. Go on, Jeff, go on.
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I'll just say, mate, we've got Joshua Hunt who's joined us in the chat.
Oh,
And
Joshua. There you go.
he's a Nintendo kid. He was
Mm.
born into Nintendo. Now he's playing some Sega and realizing Sega's
Yeah.
Oh,
vastly
very cool.
superior.
Mm.
And I'm just gonna say that's one game that he should go and play. Josh, go and play Aladdin, mate, and get a taste of the Sega Master System on that, buddy.
Yeah, gotta admit. I mean, I was able to play a few of the Sega Master System games that Dan recommended, and what leapt out at me was how like this really short comparison. I mean, even Shinobi for both Sega Master
Oh my
System
God,
and
Shinobi.
yeah,
Oh my God,
and
Shinobi. What the
NES.
hell,
Like,
NES? What
yeah,
the hell?
NES looked so
What the hell,
muddy,
NES?
really,
So
honestly.
when I sent my list across,
Mm.
I compared Shinobi
Uh-huh.
to Ninja
Ninja
Gaiden.
The
Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden.
And one of
Yes.
the reasons is I wanted to give the NES a small chance.
Mm.
Because if I compared, if I compared
No. I mean,
Shinobi
NES got Ninja
to
Gaiden anyway.
Shinobi,
To be in fairness,
you
they
know,
have their own ninja guy.
yeah, if you put Shinobi against, if you put Sega Shinobi against
Mhm.
NES Shinobi, it's no competition.
It was
Sega
yeah.
Shinobi blows it away. Blows it away.
Honestly, I mean
There
the
was this-
the graphics were muddier on the NES, Famicom, and I don't know. I guess the
The
movements
color
were a little
palette
more
for Joel. We
yeah,
have
I
to
guess the
adjust the
color
color
palette.
palette.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, you were about to say
It's much more
Viraj.
vibrant, actually.
Yeah, you were about to say Viraj.
just a quick note: there is actually a Ninja Gaiden on the Master System as well. You could,
yeah, they do.
So, but I mean, if we're comparing games, I think that's a fair comparison. That's fair because that's the staple for that system.
Correct.
That's the staple for that system. Let's do it, but we'll do that later. Okay, but we talk about some notable games for the Master System.
Okay.
Obviously. Like we obviously this is all going to come up in the comparison video later, so there might be some re-repeats. So I mean, my first experience with Master System, I know I said I had the NES, but I had a cousin who had the Master System.
Yeah.
And there's some games that are a notable mention that I remember playing at his house, which was the Master System version of Alien 3. Okay, now that game is, I believe, plays better on the Master System than the Mega Drive version. There are different versions of the 16-bit era, but I actually like the way the Master System version of Alien 3 played. So that's one to check out if you want something that's brutally hard and that's going to punish you. But it's a lot of fun and it's playable. It is a playable game. Another game that I really want to mention as well is the Asterix game. Asterix.
Asterix.
The Gaul is based on the European comic visual novel.
The cartoon Vikings.
The Vikings.
The cartoon Vikings.
Well, he's a Gaul. He was a French Gaul, and he was up against the Roman Empire. But Asterix the Gaul. But that game was actually programmed by Sega, and it plays again better than the Mega Drive versions of Asterix, because Sega themselves put this in house and Infogrames made the Mega Drive. But I like the way the Asterix game plays, and it's a great platformer for the system. I know a lot of people talk about Castle of Illusion being a great one.
Oh, Castle of Illusion, yes.
That's one that again plays better on the Master System as well compared to the Mega Drive version. A lot of people say.
Really? Now that's a challenge. Castle of Illusion was an amazing game on the Mega Drive.
The first time, and
I would say there was Land of Illusion as well. There are a few other Illusion game series on the Master System. Not
World of Illusion.
Yeah, World of Illusion was Mega Drive. But there's Land of Illusion, and there was there was a few of them in the series. I forget their names off the top of my head, but there's a few on the Master System which were really
I'm taking
good.
that as a personal challenge, Viraj, because the Genesis Mega Drive version of Castle of Illusion was brilliant. Really,
I think the Master System version plays better.
Sorry, Ned.
That's one of the things for me that makes the Master System actually still quite special and still quite relevant, because a lot of the ports differ. You know what I mean? The Castle of Illusion on the Master System is a different game. It's got the same basics, the same game mechanics, but the stage layouts, the enemy placements, and all that, and the feel is quite different. And that happens, like Viraj mentions, with a fair few Master System games. And I think that sets the Master System apart from the Nintendo Entertainment System, because the Nintendo Entertainment System, they tended to reboot a lot of stuff for the Famicom. So Zelda 1 is linked to the past, Zelda 3, but enhanced. Do you know what I mean? It's similar with the Super Mario Brothers. There's not that much difference in terms of the actual play, whereas with the Master System, I think a lot of the Master System games, like I say, Castle of Illusion, they're wildly different from the Mega Drive versions.
Quick question to both Dan and Viraj. What? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Before we go rather in depth with Sir Dan's experience with the Master System, I would like to hear from Sir Siebert, because how in the hell was he able to finish Alex Kidd? How in the hell does that happen?
I'm actually learning from this. I heard a lot.
Go for Siebert.
And it was fun. Well, just to let you know, Viraj and Dan, I only came to know about the Master System. It's like when I'm already working. I have to be honest. So I grew up knowing only the NES, and I'm a big fan. Sorry about that. Don't get me wrong, because here in the Philippines, NES Nintendo was big back in the days. So I only came about knowing Sega when Sonic came out. So why is that? So I just wanted to add what Viraj just mentioned about the history of Sega Master System and all that. Because when we talk about the recession back in the 80s, when Atari came in, so the only as we look at it, the only one that got affected with that recession was only in the US, but not in the UK. So UK was continually releasing consoles, so they're not exactly affected with any recession or any any plague that Atari created. What's the term again?
The game crash of
The video game
1983.
crash of
Game
1983.
crash of the
The North
1980.
American game crash of
Mm.
83.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just to let you know, Dan Viraj, the Philippines is highly influenced by Americans.
Very true.
That's the first. So we were more introduced with Atari because of this reason, because the Americans actually, because back in the 80s, we're only introduced with what we see. There's no internet,
Yeah.
there's no any form of medium. Even magazines are hard to actually acquire back in the days. To be honest, here
They're
in the
pricey.
part where we're at, here in the Philippines, huh?
Mhm.
So when Famicom became a thing, it was not exactly pretty much popular when it first came out. But that was only it only became a thing when Super Mario was released.
Mhm.
So it was big. I actually this started that craze with Nintendo and the Famicom when it
Mhm.
got released. So, but no one knew about any Master System or any other console that was released in other side of the country, of the world, that is. So I actually only came to know Sega when Sonic came out
Mm.
in Genesis.
Mhm.
So I'm a big fan of Sonic. Don't get me wrong. I have a Sega CD, Mega CD. I have a huge collection. Some of my holy grails are from Sega. But the NES is actually very special to us because this is
Mhm.
what we grew on. We had no
Mhm.
internet, we had nothing. So we are only presented with what we see, what we have.
That's all we had. That's
So,
all we. That's all we had. That's all we knew.
exactly. So
Some
we
would say
had.
actually, to interject a little bit, Siebert, some would
Mm,
say the growth of the Famicom NES in the Philippines was organic because we really didn't experience much marketing, American marketing of either console. So you got the console that your friend had. So your friend had a console. You said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. I want one of those." And of
I
course,
want one
the
of
other
those.
kids, yeah, other kids in the playground said, have you heard about this game, Super Mario Brothers? Hey, that sounds pretty cool. I need to get one of those too. So in the Philippines case, it was very much word of mouth, organic growth, and sad to say, Sega really didn't even flourish back then in the Philippines because there was no word of mouth
Nobody
about it
knew
back
what
then.
Sega was or
Nobody
the
knew.
Master
Yeah.
System.
Not
Hmm.
Nobody knew
until Mega Drive Genesis.
exactly.
Very true. Continue,
If you
Super.
look at the graph, can you check the graph again?
Yes. Hmm.
Because I have to be
Yeah.
honest, there's a huge
The
difference when it comes to graphics.
the
That
comparison
is
chart. Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Hmm.
Sega is definitely a good system
Hmm.
as compared when it comes to specs. But if you're a kid, I was like, I have to be honest. Most of us grew up like we were like 8 years old, five, six, seven.
Hmm.
If you're at that age, would you even think about graphics?
No,
Would you even care about graphics?
Nah.
We
Nah.
had
I
we
probably
had
cared about them more.
CRTs back then. We had
I
CRTs.
think
We even have black and whites back in the days. Here in the
Hmm.
we were happy that it's in color. All
Oh yeah.
right.
Oh.
well, that's
we wouldn't care if it's black and white, if the
I don't know
graphics
about Sir
well,
Grudge.
as
Yeah,
long
no,
as
no,
you
no, no.
play it,
You're
I'm an
talking to a
well.
guy who's 50 years old. He grew up with black and white television, and
okay.
you
We,
know the
we grew up with
dial was
Pong.
yeah,
We grew
yeah,
up with Pong.
with
God damn
Pong.
it.
There you go. That's it.
Okay.
Continue, Seabird.
I
Okay.
grew up with a TV that I tap at the side to make the
Oh yeah,
the the graphics work.
you.
So
No.
I'm an 8 year old who grew up with NES and graphic is and the system. As long as it presents me a good game, I only had the
Mhm,
Super Mario, unfortunately. So I played that over and over. I never get tired of playing it.
mhm,
So I was introduced to NES eventually, but that's a different topic. So
mhm,
Hmm.
that's my take. So NES for me, Sega is something that I loved when Sonic came out, but Master System is not. I'm pretty sure that most Filipinos who can relate with me that we don't know the Master System.
mhm,
But I actually just recently found out that the Sega Game Gear
mm. Nice. Customized Sega Game Gear, Sailor
was
Moon.
was made to be the portable version of the Master System.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I've been playing a lot of Sega Game Gear game like the Aladdin. I finished it. Aladdin Genesis, the Donald Cape Capers.
Lucky Dime Capers.
Lucky Dime Capers. There you go. So
Mm.
I actually it's upstairs, so I have a bad internet down upstairs, but I played a lot of Sega Game Gears. So I just recently found out it's the Master System version. Because here, if you look at our internet in our marketplace, if you try to check a Master System, it's gonna cost you a lot. So, but if you look at a Famicom, it's full of Famicom clones, originals. So we are very much accessible to Nintendo. So if you look at the Master System, it costs a lot actually, and it's rare to see one here in the Philippines. So if you guys have the time, you can actually ship us out some Master System there.
So very quick one on the Game Gear being a handheld Master System.
Oh, there you go. The Game Gear Micro. I need one of those.
What the hell is that?
It's the Game Gear Micro. It's the Game Gear Micro. Gotta
That's
get
all
one of
it
those.
is. That's how little it is. Look, it's in the palm of my hands.
Yeah.
Looks like a beeper.
Yeah, it looks like a
Yeah,
beeper.
It's tiny.
Continue,
but I just want to say very quickly, and not a lot of people know.
Turn
this.
it on. Turn it on.
Oh my God, turn it on. A lot of people know this, but when you
Oh my God.
when you back in the day, you actually had a cartridge converter for the Game Gear that allowed you to play Master System games on it. So it's actually a portable Master System. You know, there's actually a bit of hardware that does exist that allows you to carry Master System games and make it portable. I don't remember Nintendo making anything like that for their NES.
No.
Sega had that for this.
So what is smaller, that one or the Nintendo Micro?
The GBA Micro.
This is smaller. This is the smallest handheld in the world. This is the smallest handheld in the world. Yeah, I've got a micro. I'll have to dig it out.
Siebert is showing his. Siebert is showing his.
Just for comparison, this is my Game and Watch. You know, that's the
there
Game.
you go. Game and Watch. That was my era too. There you go. I need to get that. I need to definitely get that. I think it came out in 4 colors, right?
How much is
Yeah,
that?
it did, but so I can't. It's out of print now, but it was about £60 when it came out.
Yeah,
for one
about
of these.
£60 when it first came out. Yeah, I need to get all 4 colors.
If you're gonna be interested with that, the only downside to that Game Gear Mini is that it's only limited to 4 games per color.
Yes,
and each
you can
color
hack
had
it, though.
different games.
But you can hack it now, so you can have 42 games on there if you really
Oh,
want to.
really?
Yeah, you can. I'm a part of a community that does this sort of modding or mini stuff, so you can actually mod it. But to be honest, you wouldn't.
No, you would not. No, if I had one of those, I would not even. I might not even take it out.
If you have a spare, why not?
In regards to the Master System, this is this is for my Mega Drive Mini, and it's an add-on that they made. It's a piece of plastic, but at the time they made this for the Mega Drive in Japan and in Europe. This is the Master System converter. So this just touches on the whole point I made about how Sega made their systems backwards compatible, because this thing, which is obviously the Mega Drive, it actually has well, it's got a Mega CD add-on too, but the Mega Drive itself had a Master System hardware built in anyway. So all it needed was a gateway for you to plug in and allow you to play them. This is obviously a Japanese Mark III cart, but there's a European cart version as well. And you put your cart in, and you can play your Master System games this way via Mega Drive without having 2 of these consoles. So
Viraj is now going to be building the Tower of Power. Okay?
Oh yeah, I've got 32X as well. And that's the Sega My Card. Really, you can still play the old My Card games on the Mega Drive. Amazing, right? So you had that backwards compatibility for your retro fix for the Mega Drive in 1990.
Dan, you were about to say something.
Yeah, no, something as well about that Master System converter is that it was only about £40 at the time when it came out. It was really, really cheap.
That sounds like they really made steps to make the thing affordable.
To be honest, I thought it's the NEC TurboGrafx only came up with those cards.
Yeah.
In real life, Sega had one.
Yeah, it's just an idea of what they look like, and it was just it had less memory.
Nintendo Famicoms.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
but the Master System converter, you think for 40. So you buy a Mega Drive. You know when everybody talks about the Super Nintendo versus the Sega Mega Drive.
Yeah.
They do a head-on comparison a lot of the time, and they totally forget that for £40, which would probably cost the same as a Super Nintendo would at the time, you can make your Mega Drive into a Master System. So you get two consoles. If you were buying two things, that's what I did at the time. The same price, a Super Nintendo, you could get a Sega Mega Drive and a Sega Master System.
Yeah, it's an easy choice, especially for a parent back then. You know, I'm imagining a parent in the UK thinking, "All right, Billy, what? No, Billy isn't a UK name.
Nigel. It's Nigel.
Okay, fine. Nigel. All right, Nigel.
Nigel.
We have Billy's here.
Oh, you do have Billy. Okay.
Billy's just short for William.
Yeah, that's true.
All right,
all right, Billy. All right, Billy. So we're gonna either getting the NES, which is one console, or the Genesis Master System, which is basically a two for one. As a parent, it's a no-brainer choice. You can get, you know, in the UK, I guess that's how the mindset of the parent went. And I'm imagining that's probably one of the things that allowed it to go as far as it did in the UK. You know. All right. First things first, though.
What gaming console would you like for our household?
That is a terrible British accent, Joe.
I am in a mess. I would like to go with Nintendo, but I would rather go with the Sega Master System this time.
May I have some more, please? Okay, stop it, Joe. Okay,
he's been watching too much Harry Potter. That's what's happening.
Okay, first things first. Let us acknowledge the audience in the chats. Let's say hi to Miss Lera Señeres. Miss Lera, hello, Miss Lera of Leroxy Twitch page. She says, "Do you also blow the cartridge if it's not working?" That was something that you touched on, Viraj, right? It's not. So.
We didn't have to touch on that.
You didn't have to. Yeah, that's it.
You didn't have to on our system. You never had to. But with the NES, just to be very clear, people blow the cartridges. It's not always a good idea because your saliva comes out. It's corrosive to the bits in there. I wouldn't recommend it. The reason your NES isn't actually working is the contacts have been pressed in. So if you take apart your NES and reinsert your contacts, it'll work as good as new. So the contacts have just been depressed. That's what it is. So you don't blow the cartridge. Okay, it helps a bit to get the contacts to really push in.
But 8 out of 10 times, it does work when you do it.
Again, it's one of those organic things that kind of happen, you know, because you saw somebody do it, so you do it too. Right? All right. Also, somebody in the chat, Mr. Ranji Patag, that's my godson in Pinoy Retro Gaming. Hello, Ranji. It's nice to see you. And of course, saying hi to Raymond Orendes, who is also one of our regular panelists here in Timeless Gamer, but he opted to bow out a little bit for this episode because he has absolutely zero knowledge about Sega, but he has lately been starting to get into it. That's the wonderful thing about retro gaming. What is old is new again. All right, let's continue, Viraj. You were about to say.
So we're talking about backwards compatibility with the Mega Drive hardware, which is a great thing with Master System. So you got many ways to play Master System games even back then. You had obviously the Master System 1, Master System 2. You had the Game Gear if you wanted to have that converter that allowed you to play Master System games on the go. And you also had backwards compatibility with your new Sega Mega Drive. And that's a really good thing to have. So, yes, it might have not been a global success, but it was very popular here in Europe. So, if anyone from Sega is listening to this, please make a Sega Master System Mini. I think it will be successful. Let's do it. I think that I was expecting that this year. We got a Mega Drive Mini too, which is okay, great. We got Sega CD games on that. But I do think there is an interest here to play these 8-bit games of that era on the Master System. Because a lot of people say, well, hang about, the Master System sold, 20 million worldwide? That's less than half of what a Mega Drive sold. But it was Sega's second most popular system. The Saturn and the Dreamcast did, just over 10 million? Master System sold 20 million. And I do think there's a drive for a lot of people to want to experience a Master System in a mini form factor. There is a case for a Master System Mini. And
to add to that, Sir Viraj,
to be fair with Saturn Dreamcast, there were several competition already.
Yes.
Sega Dreamcast.
That's a podcast in its own right if we're going to talk about Sega with Master System and what happened. But with Master System, I think in Europe and in Brazil, it was very popular, and now I think a lot of people say there's no justification for them to actually make a mini of it because it wasn't as successful as NES. But then I would say, well, hang about. If you go and buy figures of how successful the console was, then nostalgia feels the nostalgia people have for that system, then okay, that's one point. But then there's the other point, a hidden factor, the X factor, which you aren't considering, which is there are people, I see people here who didn't grow up with a Master System that might be curious.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if they launched one in a mini form factor so people could enjoy it because they want to have it and try it? And this is the best way to legitimately play these games. And
It
I think
would be an
Sega should
amazing
look at
thing.
that. Yeah,
Agreed, completely agreed. Because of the fact that, like I said, there are literally thousands of games that you have never played before, especially considering the fact that you focused on one console when you were growing up. There's literally thousands of games in other consoles that were contemporary to the console that you grew up with. There's going to be tons of new experiences that you guys might want to partake in, and what better way to do that than to do a let's do a head-to-head in terms of software, in terms of what games were available on the this is Dan's list. What games were available on the Nintendo, and compare it to the Sega Master System Challenger that Dan laid out. So for Nintendo, we had Super Mario Brothers 3. Everybody here in the Philippines and abroad knew
No,
about
I
Super
believe even in the UK.
in
Because
the
I
UK.
have to
Yeah, all
agree
right.
with I have to agree with Gerard with releasing the minis.
Mhm.
Because if you look at the games that was released from the NES, it's like
Mhm.
actually half of
Mhm.
what the Master System already
There you
had released.
go. So
Okay, because
super.
and actually, I just wanted to point out that
Go ahead.
the
Go ahead.
only reason that the NES for me personally is
Mhm.
more popular than the Master System ever since. It's because of the market.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the market in the US is really big, and this is the reason why most of the developers back in the days are focused not just in Japan, but also in the US, because
Mhm.
this is where developers will actually cash in more and create more games. And I believe that the reason why Master System was more popular in the UK as compared to the NES, it's because of the advertising back in the days was only focused on the US market. So
Mhm.
Yeah. Like
and in
Gerard said, mate.
UK it came out 1987 when Super Mario came out. So
Mhm.
they were prematurely advertising outside of the US. So and
Yeah.
since we as Filipinos we are highly influenced by Americans, this is the reason why
Yeah.
nobody knows
Well,
what a master system is. And we're neighboring to Japan at the same
but
time.
I mean, another factor I want to just add in there to add
Go
to the
ahead.
why this wasn't as successful as it could have been in Europe is
Mhm.
because of the Commodore 64 and microcomputers. Yeah,
Mhm.
console gaming crash didn't affect
Oh
us.
yeah.
People were happy with the microcomputers that were coming out then. The graphics on a Commodore 64 is in parity with this, you could argue.
Yeah.
And but when you look at a Master System, that looks like like we've just discussed before.
Mm.
It is a world apart from this. Like
Mhm.
it's actually has more DNA with a PC engine, the Master System, than a NES. If you actually look at the
Speaking of
specs,
which,
really,
that's
you
something that
know,
we really should discuss sometime in the future.
yeah. So
I've seen a few games on the PC Engine, and
oh
I'm amazed
yeah,
at
yeah,
the fidelity and the graphic
yeah.
fidelity of the PC Engine games to arcade games.
Mm.
But yeah, we will be touching on that in the future. We will be going into that in the future. But right now, I'm not even going to ask Joe to show video clips of the Famicom games because we all know what Super Mario Brothers looks like. Let's
Mm.
have a look at the Sega Master System version of the head-to-head challenger of it, Sonic the Hedgehog. Joe, I'm presenting the screen right now. If you would kindly pop that up onto our screen. This is what the Sega Master System version of Sonic the Hedgehog looks like. And for those of you who are everybody who's familiar with Super Mario Brothers 3, we can have a quick look at what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like on the Sega Master System. What do you guys think about how it looks like in terms of color, in terms of speed? What are your takes on it? Let's have JDM first. He's been a little bit silent for the past couple of moments. Yeah,
Let me
what's
just change my shirt first, okay?
uh, okay, go ahead.
Mm.
All right, so Seabird is going to be switching sides.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
actually
love
played
Sonic.
this like days ago.
Mm,
Yeah, it's the first time I played this game because I
mm,
played the much newer say I mean Sonic games
Genesis,
before.
yes. Hmm.
This was the first time, it looks vivid. There's a
Mhm.
lot of colors. Yeah, and the what do you call this? The animation is
Mhm.
much more smoother, and look how fast Sonic goes without
Mm.
like lagging. Right?
That's true.
It's
That's
good.
very true. Siebert, I think you mentioned something along the lines of the Master System version being close or almost the same as the Game Gear version.
I'm looking at it right now. It's the same thing as
Yeah,
Sega Game
yeah,
Gear.
yeah.
So I'm a,
Really?
I'm a big fan of.
Well, actually, the sprite is different for Sonic the Hedgehog because they had
Oh
less
yeah,
resolution to work with. They made him a bit skinnier, but otherwise, yes, it's the
That's
same.
true. That's true.
As a game,
no, no.
it,
I'm
Mm.
referring. If you're gonna be looking at it based on the gameplay,
yeah.
Gameplay,
yes,
yeah.
Mm,
they're basically the same. So I've finished Sonic, by the way, this part.
yeah.
So there are
Mhm.
two. When Sonic got released, there were two developers of Sonic. One is
Mhm.
for Ancient, which
Yep,
was for the Master
that's it.
System and Game Gear,
Mhm.
Yep.
and the other one is for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive.
Mm.
So these are two different games. So if you're wondering what the Sega Genesis and the version and the Master System version is, they're different. So
Mhm.
they have different developers. So Ancient is different, and probably one of the hardest Sega Game Gear games I played was Sonic 2.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Fair
just
enough.
to add that.
It's
But
more
anyway,
challenging. As
I,
well.
I I find it unfair to actually compare Sonic with Super Mario Brothers 3.
Oh, really? How so?
Why? Why?
Because I have to be honest, Super Mario is one of my favorite.
Mhm.
Um, I because I believe Sonic was really Super Mario Brothers was released in the UK in '91,
Mhm.
but before it was released in the UK, we already are familiar with Sonic. With that Super Mario Brothers already.
Mhm.
So when Sonic came in, it was a different it was a different thing. So
Mm.
here in the Philippines, I'm referring to because I believe back in the '80s we already knew about the Super Mario Brothers. So the three, because
Mhm.
the Super Mario Brothers 2 was released on the Famicom Disk System,
Hmm.
and the Super Mario Brothers 1, which is highly popular, was released '85, and on '87 it was released on the UK.
Mm.
So this is the reason why there was a gap between Europeans being introduced with the NES. It's because the NES was not actually advertised much and
Hmm.
was more focused on the US market.
Mm.
So and I understand that when back in the '85 when Super Mario Brothers was released, it was really big in
Mhm.
Japan and in the US that the Europeans thought of something to actually match the Super Mario, and they came up with Alex Kidd, which was on
Mm.
'86. And this is the reason why Alex Kidd was really big. It's because they're trying to actually match that with Super Mario Brothers, which is I I'm not sure if you'd agree with me. It's one of the best games that's
Mm.
ever released, not just on the Master System, but from all consoles. So '87 was the time that Europeans was
Alex
released
Kidd,
was
the
introduced
Alex Kidd,
with
the monkey
Super
boy.
Mario.
No, 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 no.
Alex
So
Kidd and
in
the
Miracle World, the
Miracle
first
World.
one.
There you
Oh,
go.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
Alex Kidd's up later with the
yeah,
original Super
yeah.
Mario Brothers.
Let's talk.
okay.
Let's stick to the whole thing about Mario Brothers 3 versus Sonic
Mm.
the Hedgehog.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
I'll talk about what I know about this. Right. So
Okay.
basically, okay, Sonic. This thing was 1991 when Sonic 1 came out. Now Mario
Mhm.
Brothers 3, to be fair to it, was actually released in Japan in
Mhm.
'89. It only just got
89. Yes.
Hmm.
and in 1990 in the USA.
Mhm.
I don't believe it. I could be wrong here, but I believe it was 1990 here also in Europe. But if you say 91, then fair enough. But
Mm.
I mean, I think it's a fair comparison because one thing we haven't talked about in terms of Mario Brothers 3, and
Mm.
this is something I've spoken to Dan about countless times. What Nintendo were doing to prolong the life of the Master System
Ah.
was they were putting enhancement chips in their cartridges. Okay,
Mhm.
that game had an enhancement chip to make Mario Brothers 3 look and play like it belongs to a 16-bit era. Even though the color palette is clearly a NES, it had
Mm.
sound enhancement chips in there. It had hardware
Oh.
to make the game look good. So on native NES hardware, they could not make Mario Brothers 3 possible. Nintendo would. So you could argue it's not a fair comparison because this game was really over-engineered for what it was to push the NES, and it was very successful. Mario Brothers 3.
And just on that, Viraj, I remember Mario Brothers 3 being as expensive as a Super Nintendo cartridge for those reasons. When it was in the UK. So it's like I say, there's that to bear in mind alongside it.
Yeah, so you have that, but then when you look at Sonic the Hedgehog 1, the Master System 1, which was quite rightfully mentioned earlier by Seba, saying it was made by Ancient, it was basically a studio headed by Yuzo Koshiro, the legendary composer behind classics such as the Streets of Rage soundtracks and the Shinobi soundtrack. It's actually a very well-made game that's more platform-heavy than the Mega Drive version. In fact, this goes back to the point I made earlier, and I'm sure Dan will agree. There are those fans that actually believe that Sonic on the Master System plays better than the one on the Mega Drive because they like the platform-heavy segments on how the Master System version of Sonic 1 is. It's a beautiful game. It has a lovely soundtrack as well. Let me just touch on that. The second zone, Bridge Zone, Janet Jackson actually ripped it off. And she
really?
Yeah. So everywhere I go, I think that's what the song is called. If you listen to the bass line,
Together Again. Everywhere I go.
That one. Okay.
Listen to Bridge Zone on Sonic on the Master System. You realise, and there's a few YouTube videos that show that they did that. So it has a beautiful soundtrack, again composed by Yuzo Koshiro, and it's obviously scaled back some of the Masato Nakamura soundtrack on the original Sonic game on the Mega Drive, but it is a beautiful soundtrack. And it's a beautiful game. If we're comparing these two games, you could argue that there are differences. You've got the NES game, which is very, very much over-engineered for what it was. It was coming to the end of the life cycle because the Super Nintendo was coming out then. But the Master System Sonic game is a great game on its own merits. The only difference is that obviously it's not a fair comparison from my point of view, because Mario Brothers 3 was a juggernaut of a game. It's a bigger game, to be fair.
Agreed. That's true.
It's a bigger game. But I think the Sonic on the Master System is more playable and it's a great platform game. So it's
all these comparisons are gonna. There's always going to be. It's not quite the right year. It's not quite the right size. The reason I'm picking them are kind of like if you're going head to head, as in just a name and a system. If you're just wanting to play these, I'm a platform fan. What system do I buy? Then which do you pick? You see.
What's funny is Siebert said, "I don't think it's a fair comparison because Sonic came out after Mario, and obviously it's gonna." But people say it's a better game.
I love them both.
But then I could always say, "Well, hang about. I don't think it's a fair comparison because that Mario Brothers 3 game was over-engineered to be that big as it was." So, but then look, it's whatever you prefer, what you think is the better game, isn't it?
Yeah, I love them. I'm gonna have
the question is, Siebert, what do you think is the better game?
That's the thing. That's why it's not a good comparison. I'm gonna be having a hard time.
I tell you, I'm a Sega guy, and Dan's gonna kill me for this, but I actually prefer Mario Brothers 3 to Sonic.
Change your shirt
as a game. Yeah,
I picked 10 comparisons to make. Out of the 10, if I had to give Nintendo one, it'd be Super Mario Bros. 3. It was. I love Sonic. I think it's great. I'm one of those that prefers the Master System Sonic 1 to the Mega Drive Sonic 1. Okay. I think the Mega Drive later Sonics are the best Sonics. But if I had to be honest, I think Super Mario Bros. 3 is a better game. It is a fantastically engineered game, and it pains me to say it, but I'd agree with you, mate. So we're not all being that biased.
I have to agree because I didn't want, because I'm a big Sonic fan. I have to be honest, because back in the days when we were growing up, we were just little kids who grew up knowing Mario, and the whole revolution of Sega coming in, introducing Nintendo and Sega. What I mean is Sonic being fast, because us going to our puberty and that we're changing hormones and all that, and that made us love Sonic. Aside from us being used to with Super Mario that we grew up with, so it's really hard to compare them. But yes, Super Mario 3 is definitely one of the best games released. Also Sonic.
You won't get many more votes out of me for Nintendo this episode.
Well, let's.
All right, not really. We have Metroid, we have Castlevania. We're still
well, right now let's.
There's a list. There's a lot.
Right now, sorry, Viraj, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
You say you had Castlevania. We had Master of Darkness, my man.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There you go. Right? There's always an alternative I can throw it your way. You might have had Metroid.
I played Master of Darkness, and I'm surprised I was able to reach a lot further in Master of Darkness than I was playing Castlevania. For some reason, Master of Darkness is much easier for someone like me playing it for the first time. And yeah, I mean, there's a comparison of Castlevania, and I'm like, I know it's a blatant rip off, or a or the similarities are there, but for some reason, I just played. I played Master of Darkness, and lo and I mean, there's not much boss characters in there. I mean, you just go from one place to another. I was dreading that. Oh my god, I'm already way too deep on the first stage. I'm waiting for the first boss to appear, and nothing. Just platforming, avoid, defeat the monsters, then go on ahead to the next one.
In fairness, with Master System, it's actually a good game. But the thing is, the only problem is the gameplay is short. So if you compare that to Castlevania, so we're gonna be talking about.
But Castlevania is. I mean, I'm a Castlevania fan. I love Castlevania. Don't get me wrong. Okay, but the problem I have with Castlevania is the static way in which it plays. When you're jumping, he's limited to how he jumps, and there are instant death kills. There are instant death kills. When you jump onto a platform, there's a bat hitting you. It knocks you back, and you're in a dip. What is this? We all been there. So Castlevania, even though it's got critical acclaim in the first game of whatever it was in its series, and the later games are so much better. But that first game, I can understand why at the time it was great, but it is not aged gracefully. And there have been remakes of that, and I know people played the remakes. Or unless you want to play the first game, if you want to punish yourself. But
I forgot
it was programmed that way to annoy the players.
Yeah.
No way.
And there are a lot of Nintendo games like that, yeah? Like all these LJN published rubbish, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know, there's so many bad games.
LJN, yes.
They're like, I'm the programmer. I'm not gonna make these games longer. I'm just gonna make it more annoying, even more harder for the players, so that you know.
In my opinion, look, the NES had a lot. Obviously, it had a lot. It's not my opinion. It's a fact. It had more games, but there was a lot of rubbish on it. There was a lot of bloatware, a lot of stuff. And because it just had stuff. I don't know why they even published it. What's this Nintendo seal of quality be doing on it? There is no quality on this game. What is this nonsense? You know.
Now,
if it has the quality, it has the seal of Nintendo, then that means it should be good, right?
That seal was a disgrace in the 80s. They didn't know what they were doing. And
that seal does not mean shit.
What I will
seal
say,
of approval, my ass. No.
Siebert was about to say something.
No, I have to be fair with because it's true that Nintendo released some bad games, but they really released some good installments that's still popular nowadays. Like for example, Castlevania. They're still releasing games as
that's Konami.
That's Konami, man. That's Konami.
That's Konami. That's third party.
Konami, of course.
Castlevania
on the NES. So,
the first part one.
Nintendo actually are making these games. It's the developers. So I just want to point out, if NES had the bad ones, well, I believe Master System also had
some pretty bad ones too. I have to admit.
Well, yeah, because if you compare the number of games that was released on the NES, it's like a double of what the Master System.
That was what was so one of the things I hated about the NES, because you could not move for crap. Really, there were good stuff. I'm not saying they weren't. Like I've just said, mate, Super Mario Brother 3. But if I went into my local game shop, it would be 10 crap games, one good game for an S.
Oh, well, there you go.
If you were buying on cover art and you were buying on screenshots on the back, chances are you were gonna my friends who had an S, got it. You know, like, oh, I've got this. I've got Road. I remember, friend. I've got Road Fighter.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Got home and played it. Shit.
Oh,
Shit.
Road Fighter was the shit. Come on.
And you didn't have the concentration wasn't the same for the Master System. The Master System had bad games. But it would be for every good one there a bad one, as opposed to for every good one there were 10 bad ones on the Nintendo.
Dan is arguing ratio. Dan is arguing numbers on this one. The ratio
Road
was
Fighter
completely
has
off.
Superman. Come on.
it's a bad ratio.
Outrun doesn't have Superman flying.
No, the thing about Superman flying in Road Fighter was the moment that you saw him, you got distracted and your car crashed. That was terrible.
All right. All right. So anyway, so we talk about Mario Brothers 3 versus Sonic the Hedgehog. I think we can we all agree? Are we I don't know. Some of you might actually prefer the Sonic 1 game, but I'll say Mario Brothers 3. Dan said Mario Brothers 3. What are you guys saying? What's your verdict on this one?
I'll go with Super Mario Brothers 3, but I may say no on Sonic 2. I love Sonic 2.
Okay.
Not on the Master System. Don't get me wrong. But on
comparing
the
Super Mario 3 and Sonic 1 for the Master System.
I love the Super Mario Brothers 3. So I grew up playing Sonic 2 on the Genesis.
Raise your hands for Mario.
Mario 3 versus Sonic 1 on the Master System.
So Mario's got that round.
Super Mario Brothers.
Mario got that round.
Just a quick shout out. Sonic Chaos in the Master System is an honourable mention. It's a Sonic game. Play it because it's actually my favourite game on Sonic game on the Master System. But
gotta check that Sonic Chaos. All right. So from let's see, from platformers, let's go to a more direct comparison. Beat 'em ups. Beat 'em ups for this section is going to be Double Dragon for the SEGA Master. All right,
come on, boys.
There you go.
On me now.
All right, let's do Double Dragon for SEGA Master System versus Double Dragon for the NES. I am sharing the screen right now. Joe, would you kindly put it up onto the screen? This is going to be a direct comparison. Scene for scene. Let's have a quick look. Right now, for those of you who are in the audio portion of the podcast, we are looking at a direct comparison of the screens between Double Dragon NES Famicom versus Double Dragon on the SEGA Master System. Let's hear what you've got to say, Dan.
Right. So I'm going to give you a quick brief history. So we've had Viraj's brief history on his point of view.
Yes.
Now my point of view was something Viraj touched on. The Master System was the stepping stone between the arcade and the home. You know, we eventually got the arcade at home with the Mega Drive, but me, I was a big arcade gamer, massive arcade gamer, and it meant everything. What systems had the closest games to the arcades versions that were available on them? Double Dragon was huge, absolutely huge. And I made so many childhood friends playing this game in the arcade. So when this game came to console, it was a big deal. In the UK, this was like, oh my God, Double Dragon is landing. So I went round to a friend's who had a Nintendo Entertainment System. I've got Double Dragon. Oh my God, I've got Double Dragon. Let's play it. I can't wait. Got there. I'm set. I'm ready to play it with him. Yeah. It's one player. It's only got
it's one player. Yeah.
Player. It totally, my heart, bro. I was like, you are joking. Are they taking the absolute piss? Because how can you have Double Dragon, which is famed for multiplayer, friendship making, 2-player beat 'em up action, 1 player. And I went home and I was like, no way, man, no way. I am getting a SEGA Master System. I am on that. And for me, not only does it look better, not only have you got the 2-player option, but it plays way better too. It's a faster, more dynamic beat 'em up all around. And this for me. If you're talking a game which shows the Master System superiority, it's Double Dragon is definitely one of them. To me, it just blows the Nintendo version away.
Yeah.
And the trying
Double Dragon too.
and Double Dragon you've on the Nintendo, you don't even start with all the moves. You have to level up to earn the moves. What kind of crap's that? It's an arcade game, not an RPG. That's what Nintendo did with all the. They were so scared that the young audience were gonna, oh no, I've got to learn these games. That they didn't trust them to. Right, here's all your moves. Here's full on hardest difficulty. Get to it. And I much preferred that, especially being an arcade gamer. When you're playing easier difficulty and you're having to burn your moves as well, it would just it was terrible. So this one's easily.
Gotta admit, actually, Dan, the first time I played Double Dragon on the SEGA Master System, I was absolutely surprised that the moveset was all there right from the get-go. The NES Famicom version had you have to earn the moves as you progressed. Yeah. But in this case, when I first booted up Double Dragon on the SEGA Master System, I was surprised that you could actually do the reverse kick right away.
Yeah.
That you could do the headbutt right off the bat.
You imagine being me, a big fan of this game. I used to fight to get on this coin up. I used to actually have physical fights with kids. So I used to say, I'm getting on that next. We'd have a fight, and then we'd have a fight on this. Mm-hmm. But you imagine me being that big a fan of that game. That's how what I wanted, and playing the game where not only can I not play with my friends, I can't. There's not half the moves there to start off with. I'm like, so yeah. So this
when I played this when I played the Double Dragon for the SEGA Master System, a few things that I've noticed. Sometimes the hit detection can be off. I have more luck hitting the enemies if I kick. And to be fair with the enemies, they can really knock the shit out of you if you're not paying attention.
Yeah,
and it's not like a one-sided fight in comparison with Golden Axe or Street of Rage, that you can easily defeat your enemies. Here, I mean, they really do fight back. And
you can put up a fight.
Which is fine, because in a beat 'em up, it's not about just you beating them up; it's them also kicking your ass if you're not too careful.
Double Dragon on SEGA Master System is actually my favourite version. I prefer it now to the arcade version because the arcade version slows down too much for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I prefer it to the Genesis version because the Genesis version is a terrible port. That's
okay.
It's not.
We don't ever talk about Double Dragon on Mega Drive. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about any of the games, not just the first one. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. I'll get crazy. Go on.
Yeah, but for me, the actual combat and the Master System version is very tit for tat. I like tit for tat games. I like flirtatious games that you can punch somebody 1 minute and you think you're brilliant, and they punch you back the second. And like Sir Joe says, that's what Double Dragon on Master System provides. So.
And with that, we got a little bit of a clue on how Dan's dating life went. Okay.
Yeah, we know it's obvious he's a masochist. We get it. It's okay. He likes getting beaten up. He likes it. He loves it. He likes pain. I'm not going to say anymore because we got to keep it PG-13.
Yes, we do our very best to make the episode G-rated for everybody, but we sometimes cross into the PG section.
Okay.
Go ahead, Miraj. You were about to say.
My thoughts on this particular game very much mirror what Dan said. My only criticism on the Master System version is what was mentioned by Joe in regards to the hit detection on it a little bit, and there's a bit of sprite flicker. Okay, a bit of sprite flicker. But that being said, we know this is pushing the Master System to its limits. Yeah, and if you look at both of the images, I just wanted to draw your eyes on it. Look at their feet when they're walking. Look at the animation between the Master System.
That's true.
Look how slow it is on the NES. Like I feel like when I'm playing the NES version, I'm like, goodness, come on, are we there yet? You know what I mean? And the controls are just so sticky and static. Yes, okay, you can punch a guy to death easily on the NES one, and it's an interesting playthrough. It's not a terrible game by any means, but you know, in contrast to the Master System version, and this is the biggest point here. This is why the Master System version is clearly hands down better. You play a beat 'em up. You give it 2-player support, man. You do that because it adds so much value to that game. You know, if you've got a younger brother like I have, you know, or a sibling or someone you want to have around, you know, me and my brother would fight over playing games. If you had a co-op, okay, play together, that's it.
I thought the very idea of the 8-bit era was for two players to enjoy the game, right? Especially here in the arcades. And unfortunately, with Double Dragon, and kind of ironic, there should be two of them. You're only playing one of them.
Single dragon.
It's called Double Dragon. Why am I playing only that one guy?
It's not the first time this has happened because Nintendo sort of made this mistake again on Super Nintendo with Final Fight. What player? What are you doing? It's crazy. Yeah. But look, I would say, look, I just want to make it. I've talked too much as it is. Look, for me, hands down, Double Dragon on Sega Master System is the better game. Go on, guys.
Well, let's have a listen to somebody who only experienced the NES, the Famicom version of it. Let's hear from Siebert and or JDM. What are your opinions on this comparison right now, from what you guys are seeing?
I realized that just recently. Yes, I have to agree with the guys that the guys from Sega that the Sega version is actually good. So the reason back in the days when we were renting out, because there are shops that we rent out, because this is not exactly popular until Double Dragon 2 came out. But the first one, it's because of that reason that it's just a single player that made us not want to play it. Especially if you have a friend with you, because it's not like you're gonna take turns playing a Double Dragon game, right?
Exactly.
JDM,
I don't believe the bullshit that Nintendo can only program it as a one-player game. Look at the screen. I mean, they can practically put another player in there. I mean, I don't need all of the high score, the 1PP. What the hell is that? I don't need that. Give me another player in there, right?
Yeah, the heads-up display could use some work. But
how about you, JDM? What's your impression on this?
Honestly, this is the first time that I have played Double Dragon. I haven't played Double Dragon on the Famicom or the NES.
But looking
I've
at
tried.
the screens right now, how does it come across to you?
Yeah, it looks good on the Master System, and I also played the Master System recently version, and it looks great. Although what Sergio said, the hit detection, there's like some issues with the hit detection, but I love using the weapons here because it's much more effective.
I said on my stream, you have better luck doing a flying kick rather than doing a straight punch or a straight kick.
There you go.
Yeah, sure.
I guess let's just call it for Sega Master System on this one. Double Dragon for the Sega Master System wins this round. Hands
got
down.
1-1.
All right. Okay. Now for now we've done with the beat 'em ups. Let's go on to another kind of controversial comparison. Shinobi, the action section, Shinobi versus Ninja Gaiden. Let's see if we can find some footage on that. But let's have I know. Sorry, you go ahead, Siebert.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Then I believe one of the best Shinobi game I played was on the Genesis. It's Shinobi 3.
Yes.
So
bad game. Bad man game.
I understand Dan likes Shinobi 2 more because it's because of the dash that makes me like Shinobi 3 more.
Both fantastic games, mate. It is. Shinobi's my favorite series of games, and for me to pick between any of them, you're talking millimeters worth of difference, mate.
It's like trying to say what your favorite son is. You know, you love them all the same, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but if you're because I'm a big fan of Shinobi 3, Because the only problem with Shinobi is that before Shinobi 3 got released, I find that Shinobi was a bit too slow for me for a ninja. So the because you're gonna be walking, enemies will
Yeah.
come in. So I find it really slow for a ninja to actually move that slow.
Mm.
Which is different because Ninja Gaiden is actually a very very difficult game.
Mm.
Mm.
So it's on the jumping part, but this is something that I grew up with before I was introduced to Shinobi.
Mm.
But the only Shinobi I actually got interested on was when Shinobi 3 came out.
Mm.
So Ninja Gaiden, in fairness, they've been around since the 80s. So it's actually one of those memes that I'll buy you a PS5 if you're able to finish
Finish.
Ninja Gaiden, something like that. It's one of the obvious games released on the NES aside from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But
Mm.
I'd go because of that reason that the gameplay of some of Shinobi's releases were too slow for me. I
Mhm.
played the Sega Game Gear ports, so of Shinobi, I finished them, and I would pick since Shinobi 3 is not compared to this.
Mm.
I would pick Ninja
I
Gaiden.
would give it to Siebert on this one. If
Mm.
the game didn't really say the word shinobi on the opening title, looking at the sprite, I I would not even recognize him as a full on ninja. To be
Mm.
honest, like I mean, he just strolls around. He's not doing
Strolls around.
your
Makes it
stereotypical
sound.
ninja run, right? He throws something out that okay, maybe that's a shuriken, but who knows? Maybe he's just blasting a gun or something.
Maybe he's
And
playing a frisbee.
jumping,
I don't know.
walking. I, I mean, in comparison with the Ninja Gaiden,
Mm.
he really runs
Oh yeah.
like an actual
Yeah, yeah.
ninja does.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at this guy and looking at the sprite, he doesn't look like a ninja to me. To be honest,
Wh- uh, to be fair, the modern concept of a ninja is just an extrapolation from Japanese theater, where people who are dressed in robes like that are supposed to not be seen. So the classical ninja really didn't have a uniform look, but still, uh, you guys make a fair point that for us who are weaned on the shokusugi image of the ninja, this the guy really doesn't look like one, but we
hey,
can take.
if this was my Shiranui, then okay, I'll give it that.
Well, but then again, in my Shiranui's case, you had the fun bags right there, so you really weren't concerned about the costume. So,
I will not complain.
all
That's a ninja to me.
right, I couldn't find any footage of a comparison between Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi, but we are looking at the NES Famicom version of Shinobi versus the Master System, and it's patently obvious how the color palette can be seen on the Master System as being superior. It looks great. It looks awesome, and I'd say the movement is much smoother, shall we say,
Yeah.
in the Master System version. But fair point to Siebert. Ninja Gaiden moved excellently on the NES Famicom version. Ninja Gaiden was very fluid, was extremely action packed to the point that you
There's
were
a
biting your
lot of
nails
things
for every
coming at
single
you
moment.
with Ninja
Yes,
Gaiden.
yes. So
I mean, the
that
enemies here
is
in Shinobi, they are pretty static, actually.
that's true.
I mean,
That's
you
true.
can see them coming at you.
Yeah. So I guess we can give the point to Ninja Gaiden on this one then. If let's have a show of hands. Shinobi for the Sega Master System.
Sorry,
Raise your hands.
I think Ninja Gaiden's a good game.
Mhm.
I would go with
Really?
Shinobi
Okay.
because I was
Shinobi's a
able
better game.
to go a little bit further with Shinobi than Gaiden.
Shinobi this.
Let's hear what Dan has to say.
Yeah, no, I think Ninja Gaiden's a great game. I think it's a really good game.
It is.
But I don't. I think Shinobi surpasses it in terms of stage
Mm.
variety, design, and anime placements and
Yeah,
bosses.
that's
And
true.
the bosses in Shinobi are really really standout bosses. And I just find myself. I play both, and I find myself playing Shinobi far more. I think what screws Ninja Gaiden up is that last boss. Because if you die at that last boss, you get sent back absolutely miles.
Oh, that's true.
And
that's true.
It's just a case of it's probably the most unfair skank in gaming. I honestly, if you die at a final boss, some games have the checkpoint is next to the boss. Some games it's in the middle of the level. Some games it's the start of the level. To go back to 2 levels. Get to the final boss again is the biggest bullshit in gaming. So
I like how Dan put that. It's the most unfair spank.
Mate, it's not fair. We're back to pain again.
That's true. That's true.
It's the most unfair. I genuinely think that's bad game design. I think they've obviously done it to prolong the longevity of the game, but it's unfair when games change rules all the way through the game. If you die at the boss, you reappear near the boss, and then they change that to the last boss.
There you go.
So that to me is no good. So I'm a Shinobi man there, mate. Sorry,
no problem. I'm curious about what Viraj's opinion is on this comparison.
I mean, you have to look at the context of both games. Shinobi was an arcade game built on SEGA System 16A hardware. It's a 16-bit arcade game, and they've had to scale it back a little bit for the Master System. And I played the arcade version. I have it on my SEGA Astro City Mini, I really enjoyed playing that version. And when I look at the Master System version, they did a very faithful job. For the hardware at the time, they did a very good job with the Shinobi game. Now, I like it's okay. It's not a fast-paced game, Shinobi on Master System. It's slower, but I like the fact that you've got to be strategic in how you take the enemies. You obviously have to, get the hostages and things like that. It's an arcade-based side-scrolling platform game, which I really like. I like the strategy behind it, and it's for me. It's if you look at Ninja Gaiden, I played that version as well. Obviously, there's a Master System version. And there's even a PC Engine version of that game too, and that's one that you might want to try out. But the NES, we're talking about the NES Ninja Gaiden. Now I know I haven't played all the way through it. I've only gone halfway through it. But I didn't find it as difficult. I mean, it was a fair challenge I found, but I didn't find it as difficult as Seabert made it out to be. I found it to be quite straightforward. But then I haven't got to the last boss, as Dan mentioned, and how unforgiving it is. I do like Ninja Gaiden as well. I do say it's a good game, but comparing the two, I
love how you describe it, unforgiving.
Unforgiving. And there are a lot of games that were unforgiving of that period. There were a lot of games, and to be honest, back then, that's just how they did it. If you actually look at the length of these games, it's actually an hour gameplay or an hour playthrough. If you really look at it, if you know what you're doing. So the games were built to punish you, to give you that longevity, to give you that bit of a challenge, and that's what Ninja Gaiden successfully does, albeit in an unforgiving manner. I mean, they're both two again games of a similar genre, both ninjas in them, right? I guess I prefer the side-scrolling arcade style of Shinobi, and that's why I prefer it as a game. I actually prefer the way Shinobi plays the game, albeit a bit slower than the way Ninja Gaiden is jumping around, as you can see on the video here. I actually like the way Shinobi plays on the Master System, and that's why I prefer. I mean, I just prefer Shinobi as a game. It's not because I think Ninja Gaiden's a lesser of a game. It's just not my style of game, and I just prefer Shinobi. So for me, Shinobi's the better game because I prefer the way that game plays. It's not that one's better than the other or whatever, but it's better for me for Shinobi because I just like the way that the game plays. That's it.
I have to admit that is a fair comparison, especially considering the fact that the arcade origins of both games. When you stop and think about it, the Shinobi version does hew a little bit closer to the arcade version of Shinobi, whereas I have to admit the Ninja Gaiden one, I tried Ninja Gaiden on arcade. It was vastly different from what you saw.
You guys are right, actually. What you see right here with the Ninja Gaiden, you cannot do all of this crazy stuff in the arcade.
Yeah,
you're about to say, Viraj.
Another bit is if you look at Shinobi in the way that the game plays, you also have those little shuriken stages as well, so it changes up the gameplay a bit.
Yeah.
In fact, you could argue, you could say it's actually two games in one if you look at it that way. You've got two different game styles. Whereas this is I'm not saying it's monotonous. Obviously, Ninja Gaiden has its challenges, etc. And it does have generally, from what I played halfway through, it had actually got a decent difficulty curve. I wouldn't say it's too challenging throughout the game, but obviously I haven't played it all the way through. However, Shinobi, I just really like the gameplay dynamic. I like the style of the game. I like the fact that you got to rescue the hostages. Let's save the hostages, man. You really feel like you're invested as being this guy, Joe Musashi, that's his name. I've got to save these people. I've got to bring freedom and justice to the city or whatever. So I actually enjoy the Master System Shinobi game more than I do Ninja Gaiden. And it's predominantly because I just like that style of game more than this style of game. That's it.
Yeah, well, fair play. Fair point. So I'd say between the two, they are quite. I guess it's almost the point of the fact that they're almost different genres of the same type. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really fair to do a head-to-head on them, but they are a good comparison as to
Maybe in terms
one
of
type versus
gameplay
the
for
other.
Joel, I think Shinobi is a little bit more more player friendly compared to Ninja Gaiden. I have a feeling that most players will advance further in the game if you play Shinobi. Because with the Ninja Gaiden, if you, most likely if you haven't really seen other players do Ninja Gaiden, most likely you're just going to die a lot just on the first stage alone. But with Shinobi, the first time I played it, yeah, at least I already knew what I'm supposed to do: save the hostages, make sure you throw your projectile, don't get hit, and go to the bosses.
Shinobi's got a wonderful. I mean, it's a masterclass with its difficulty gradient. It literally is one of those games as a kid. If you progress, say, one stage into the game, your next go you'll progress 1.5 stage. Your next go you'll progress 2 stages, and that gradient's mint because every time you play it, you still get that challenge, but every time you get that little bit further, and you feel great. And that to me also gives it an edge. So my vote's
just want to put this across, and this is in relation to Shinobi, and it's also a NES version that we were aware of.
Okay.
And anyone know why that came about? Because,
let's have a
so
listen.
I'll tell you what happened. So basically, this is to do with the Nintendo in Europe, and this is gonna make you laugh because it was struggling so much. Nintendo felt compelled to, license Sega's titles on the NES to make it sell. That's basically it. Yes.
Wow.
Okay. So they felt the need, like not just Shinobi. You had games like Fantasy Zone. You had Afterburner on
Fantasy
the NES.
Zone, yeah.
You had Alien Syndrome on the NES, and that's because. And I'm not saying that. We could talk about the Master. That's another thing altogether. But Nintendo were compelled to do this to try and shift more units because they knew that the Sega stuff was pretty cool. And whilst Nintendo's hardware wasn't built around the arcade style of things, they were trying to do arcade ports. And this is why this thing exists, the NES Advantage. And you know how we talk about how the games run really slow, on the NES. There's actually a lot of help you got here. You got these triggers here that can help you with things. And again, you got an auto fire button for shmups here and stuff like that. So really, it does help with RSI and things. So Nintendo were trying to compete to be fair with them. It's just that if you're looking at that hardware of a Master System and you play if you actually have both and you play both, you'll know the Master System version of an arcade version of a port typically is better. Yeah, 9 times out of 10 is better, I would say. But anyway, that's how the Shinobi on the NES came about and other games along that line. It's because Nintendo thought, we need to start to shift more units. Obviously, Sega are very popular here in Europe. When we have some Sega games on here, and give some appeal to other people, and make sure that we have. We're an and company, not an or company. That's what Nintendo always said. We're an and company, and we could do this, and we can do that. That's what Reggie Fils-Aime said. I remember
Nintendo.
Yeah, and they wanted to be inclusive at the time because they wanted to try and get something to work for in Europe. But obviously, the Master System had gained dominance in '87, and that's partially due to with the. I just want to touch on this because I never got to finish having that conversation, which was. Remember, I said Mattel marketed this when it came out in '87. This came out in '87 in Europe. Okay, at a late release, and it actually said Mattel version. Yeah, and in the first year it came out, Master System came out, and they were going head to head. This thing couldn't compete, and that's to do with poor marketing. Because marketing is like a toy. Look, it's a toy for us. It's a toy, okay? But this thing, obviously, this is the Mark II version, but the first version is beautifully looking. I wish I had one to hand, but this is a Mark II. Even this looks more adult. It looks like a proper machine. And I think Nintendo just didn't do the system justice with the way they market. The new versions of this actually did say NES version underneath, and even in the cartridges, there's actually cartridges that work on the Mattel version or were branded Mattel version, and one that was NES version, and it said A on the cartridge and B, so there were two different versions.
Well,
it just had two releases.
To be fair with Nintendo of America, this was the time when they didn't want their they didn't want the Nintendo Entertainment System to look like any other console
a game system
before it because of the crash. So rather than making it look like another console, they had to choose. They had to make it to look like a VCR.
It's a VCR, but they're saying that the Master System, the first version, actually looks like a cassette player with the play button sort of look on it on the first version. If you look at it, I don't know if you've got an image to hand to show the
It's almost like a cassette player, but at least it's not you being on the 80s. You were not going to associate the look of it from the Atari, from the ColecoVision, from the Intellivisions of old.
I just want to add that
if you're looking at the Master System right now, it looks like more of a cassette player. At least it looks different. You're not going to say, "Oh, it looks another console from '83."
But then
the games will not be good as well.
I would then countenance that by saying, actually, if you look at the Master System, whilst it kind of has that console look, it's top loader, etc. If you look at it, like I said, it actually looks like a cassette player as well. So again, Sega were also they were also mindful of that. There was a console crash in America. The Master System was actually designed for the American market before it even came to Europe. So Sega actually got it right in terms of balance, where actually
they took a different approach.
They took a different approach. I mean, this is me going back on in regards to the NES and the hardware of it.
Joshua has an interesting point here. On the chat, the only real problem with the SMS itself was putting the damn pause button on the console.
Wow. So hang about.
Really? Pause buttons in the console?
So basically, look, I've got it here. Look, basically, this is the Model 2. They all had it. Which is, if you can see here, there's the pause button.
That's the pause
Oh,
button.
you need to go all the way to reach for it.
What people would do with this version is they'd have it wired into the TV. They'd actually have the Master System by their side. If they went to pause, they'd do that. Or they'd have it by the floor, and you put your toe on this, and you put your foot down, and that's it.
The bathroom real quick.
That's the controller. As you can see,
right there.
There is a start button there. It's obviously labeled start, so you can start and stop the game. It's actually a more comfortable control than the NES, I'll say. The buttons are convex, not concave, so they're not going to dig into your thumbs after long hours of gameplay. I really like this controller. It's just
actually, we haven't even we haven't even talked about the comparison between the controllers. Actually.
Yeah. So this is obviously we got it up here. That's the Master System. That's the NES one. Obviously, the NES one is a slightly wider controller.
Very angular. Very angular.
But it's very sharp on the corners, I will say. Oh, there we go. So let's have a look here. Let me move my fingers out of the way. Let's have a look at the NES. Anyway, this top part here is just for the switch online, so ignore that bit there.
Yes.
That's the controller, okay? And again, you've got these concave, lovely red buttons here, as you can see. Let's put it to the camera.
Yeah.
And your finger can go into them, but after hours of gaming, they will press into them, okay? You have these rubber start and select buttons. Great, but wear and tear will mean those rubber buttons will wear away.
True, yeah.
Okay. You had the D-pad. Nintendo were known to be famous for creating this. This is like their innovation. Okay, so they had this, and that was for precision. So you have that. Okay, I actually
the NES controller. The NES controller will kill your thumbs.
It will kill your thumbs. It'll kill your. It really presses into your palms as well. So it really is. It does pinch it. It's a Master System.
Not very ergonomic.
To be honest, they're both square things, but because the buttons are quite low on it, my palms aren't pressed to the controller, even though it's a bit square. So it's much more comfortable. The D-pad was like a floaty thing. Some people criticize this.
Lovely. The pad is absolutely.
There we go. So you've got this lovely little floaty thing here. I mean, people would argue, okay, it doesn't give you as much precision as the D-pad does, but it works. And you have this. Actually, the earlier versions of this actually have a joystick that comes out of that, which you could screw on. It's like a little top. The first version had that. Obviously, the newer design didn't have that with the Mark III. To answer the point about a pause button, you know how I made the point about how Sega were looking to bring games from the arcade home, give that arcade experience home. When was the last time you saw a pause button on an arcade machine, guys?
Very true, yeah.
you go hardcore, man. And
There
okay,
are
you
no
do.
core
But okay, yes, it is an oversight. They did make a big
Mhm.
pause button in the Model 2, but look, it is what it is. But
Mhm.
you know,
Fair
it's
point to
hardcore,
Joshua.
man. It's hardcore.
Very, yeah, very fair point to Joshua. But Viraj actually does make a very good argument on that one. Arcade game ports, you don't have a pause button. Yeah, the pause button that you get is when you run out of tokens,
Mm.
or when your buddy says, "All right, let me take over," or something like that. Yeah.
I just
I
want
mean,
to
if
make a
you're
very,
about to die in the arcade, you're about to die in the arcade. I mean,
Mm.
pausing it will only delay the inevitable events.
Yeah,
You've
that's
got
true.
Might as well just take the bullet.
one
Repeat.
massive point that I kind of touched on earlier.
Mm.
That we bought these systems to
Mhm.
get good for the arcades.
Mhm.
These were as training.
Mm.
You know what I mean? When I got Sega Master System, Double
Mhm.
Dragon,
Mhm.
Hang-On, Afterburner, Space Harrier, those games I wanted to go home, practice on, and then go into the arcade and show off.
And
You know what I
show
mean?
off.
Yeah, that's what I did, because that's what you're a young kid. That's what you do, isn't it?
That's
So
true. That's true.
Um,
That was the biggest thing. You went home, you practiced on your home console so that you could go to the arcade and show off.
Yeah.
That's it.
Just very quickly, I know I
Mm.
pulled out my NES Advantage here, but there was a
Mm.
Master System version that they had, which is better than that, in my opinion.
Ah,
I just
okay.
don't own one. There was a Master System stick. I can't remember what it was called. It's called the Master something. And you have two buttons and you have the arcade stick. You also had the Zapper gun on the Master System.
Yes.
And they actually had, in my opinion, obviously we're not talking about it because nobody talks about these light gun games, but I think the Master System versions, well, Master System lineup was better than what the NES had. The phaser, that's what it's called.
Yeah,
Zap on the NES.
Mm.
The phaser on the Master System. Those games were a lot better for the Master. They responded better. Let's talk about 3D gaming. Yeah, Master System had 3D glass, so you had Outrun in 3D, and there were active 3D, which were actually polarized and powered up. Whereas the NES 3D was those, those red and
Virtual Boy.
blue
Glasses.
things, the red and blue
yeah.
ones. Those ones. That was a static 3D, which wasn't. We all know what that looks like because we looked at on the CRT. So the Master System level of 3D was actually state of the art. It's actually really good when you have those glasses. And the Zapper gun was a bit more precise, and I just like the way it played with Terminator 2 Arcade on the Master System at home because my friend had his and I played on that. Whereas the NES versions, I don't think the NES actually had that game. They had a lot more gallery shooters with the NES one. It was more gallery
that's true,
shooters,
yeah.
whereas with the Master System, you actually had moving sprites with their games. So it's a much more immersive arcade experience when you're playing those games. So Sega were ahead in terms of the technological guts of the system when it came out. Obviously, the Master System 2 was obviously a scale back. You don't have the abilities with the 3D and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But it's nice that they had that interactive ability on the Master System when it came out. It was actually a better machine in terms of the way you could experience video games and their range of video games. Albeit a shorter library than the NES, you had that quality and that variety, which is still good enough. It had over 300 titles, the Master System. That's what you get.
But to add on that, Viraj, to be honest, to be fair with NES, although we're talking about Sega, because this is what Sega started from, importing arcade games to
Very true.
home console.
Mm.
But if you look at it like the Sapper gun, if you're gonna be asking 100 people, one of the things could probably they mention is Duck Hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
On the Master System. There are certain games, yes, when it comes to specs and all that. But to be fair with NES, though there are games that looks better, but there are more popular games that was released if you're comparing both games. Yeah, there were popular, there were good games in Master System, but are they as popular as the NES Duck Hunt, which I believe everyone.
That was
a packing though, wasn't it? That was a packing title, Duck Hunt.
Was it?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
quite
You-
recall.
you-
Okay.
you got it with the
Duck
system,
Hunt was a
yeah.
packing. Yeah, you got it with the
Okay.
system.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's
The
true.
close that we got for the Sega Master System was Donald Duck. So it's a Donald Duck hunt.
Did
That's-
it?
oh, blah, 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 blah.
Did NES have Operation Wolf?
Operation Wolf.
Yeah.
Heavy Barrel.
Yeah.
Heavy
Very.
Barrel.
No. Operation Wolf was on the NES was a very pared down version, a very simplified version of Operation Wolf. Have to admit that the Operation Wolf on the arcade on NES had no comparison to
I
Operation Wolf
remember
on the
playing
arcade version.
Operation Wolf, and it was
Mm.
quite traumatizing as a kid. Like, you know how people are keep shooting at you, and
Yes.
then
Mm.
there's this the panel when your player dies.
Yes. Yeah,
Like
like that.
that was my Vietnam.
Yeah. Just to
The
be
lack of a
blunt
better
here,
word.
just to be blunt here.
I was afraid of because there were a few games that we had before, and Operation Wolf was one of them. You know those
Yeah.
999 in one.
Yeah.
So Operation Wolf was
Um,
there, played for the first time,
Mhm.
and after playing it for a few minutes, I just got scared. Actually,
Mhm.
no, I mean
it's
seriously. I mean, if I play it
And I'm
now
playing
as
that
an
in the
adult,
arcade.
yeah, I think I can probably fare a little bit better, feel a little bit better. But back then as a kid,
Mhm.
no.
Viraj has a point though. Let's hear what
Wow.
Viraj has to say about
Yeah,
that.
so in regards to Operation Wolf, again, the Master System version,
Mhm.
I mean, it's night and day difference on that one as well because I played the both. The reason
Oh.
I played, I mean, you're probably wondering how's Viraj played this because I created these builds during lockdown.
Mhm.
Basically, I modded my classic minis to have the entire library, and part of
Okay.
doing it is playing every single game to make sure it worked.
Yes.
So I have an idea. Even though I haven't played them all the way through, I was testing them.
Mhm.
But again, like I say with the Master System, the way it plays, the fluidity of the
Mhm.
power that system had. Remember, it had twice the clock speed, pretty much.
Really? Okay.
Yes,
I'll
if you
have to
actually
give
look at
that a
it,
try.
if you look at the Master System console, it was twice. If you look at the processor in it, it was actually twice as. I wouldn't say the system was twice as fast, but it was a
Mhm.
faster system. And because of that, the Master System game just felt more fluid. We talked about this with Double Dragon. You know,
Yeah.
the way it plays, it's just a more powerful system.
Well,
And
the reason I mentioned Operation Wolf when Sasiba mentioned that with Duck Hunt is because I damn well knew that Operation Wolf on Master System was 1,000 times better.
yeah,
Oh my
And
gosh.
that were another reason why we got it. Again, arcade, I'm a big fan of Operation Wolf in the arcade. I wanted to
Mhm.
play it at home, and I played the NES version, and it were all right. I'm not saying it were terrible, but the Master System version was much better.
Just to finalize on my point, which is if you're looking at arcade style gameplay, and this is where the Master System had a big advantage over the NES. The Master System is clearly the system for it. The NES is something that struggled with that. There are other games, and it has its pros. The NES, don't get me wrong. But if you want something that's fast paced, that's action, that gives you that immersive feeling of speed for its time. Obviously, Mega Drive is the one that gives you the speed, but this thing compared to a NES is night and day difference.
Well, I sad to say we have just hit the 2 hour mark of our podcast. We'll be closing it out with one last. There's so many other games that we should be comparing. I know Dan gave a list and I played through them. They were all amazing. But we are going to be closing out with one iconic arcade game that showed up on Sega Master System, comparing it to an NES game. I'm sharing the screen right now. Let's see. Let's do Outrun versus Rad Racer. Outrun is an arcade game that got really popular in the arcades way back when, and it just recently showed up on Yakuza Kiwami, if I remember correctly, or Zero. I could be wrong on that one. We're gonna close it out with a comparison of Outrun for the arcade for the Sega Master System versus the game Rad Racer, or Highway Star as it was known in the Japanese market and in the Philippines as well. So thoughts, and let's see what is I know Joe played through this one. Joe, what was your thought on Outrun for the Sega Master System?
At first, I didn't know what to do. Where am I going?
Mhm.
I'm like, so at first, okay. So there's a time limit. Am I racing somebody? Am I trying to catch somebody? Okay, so keep on going, keep on driving, keep on driving. Eventually, you'll reach the finish line, and then okay. So I'm still going. I'm still going. It's not like I reached the final lap, and then stage two. No, you just keep on driving. I'm like, where the hell am I driving at? Where am I going? Not only will I reach the time limit.
It's
and
not an
then
RPG.
Yeah, that's true.
it's
That's
not
true.
only until I reach the time limit,
Explore
not reaching
racing
the final
game.
lap. I didn't reach the finish line after the time
Mhm.
limit, and then the game shows this map, and it showed me where I was, and I
Yeah.
thought,
Yes, that's it.
okay, so am I already at this stage?
Mhm.
So, oh, good. So from this stage, I'm already up here. So that
Mhm.
means, so, and I thought I was already in stage two.
Mm.
The game resets back from the very beginning, and
That's
I'm
it.
like, oh,
No,
what the hell was that?
it's
So,
not an RPG.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing.
and then, yeah, and then I realized that, okay, so you have to reach the finish, the goal line within the
Mhm.
time limit.
Mhm.
Then you'll eventually realize how far you have gone through the map.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes.
See,
I
like
would
that.
say
See,
Joe, in
like
Joe's
that, like
case,
that.
yes. I would
See,
say in Joe's case, he was looking for an opponent in terms of a competitor in the race. He did not realize that his opponent was actually the clock.
Yeah,
His opponent was
it's beat
actually the
the
clock.
clock.
Yeah,
yeah.
Outrun the clock.
his opponent and his consequence that he would be choked out by his girlfriend sitting right next to him. That was the consequence of it, Joe. So I'd
And
say,
then, oh,
mm,
and
yeah, go ahead.
then Sir Viraj commented, "Oh, dude, you need to hit up and down so you can
Hmm.
go high and
Shift
low
gears.
on your gears." And the
Hmm.
only reason why I noticed those gears, and when I hit a tree and the car went jumped up because I hit the tree, and
Hmm.
then I saw, oh, there's a
Hmm.
LNH in there, so
That's the only time that you notice the LNH.
when the car was sent flying after I hit the tree, I
Oh
hit the
my
tree, and
goodness.
then that's the only realize I saw the L and H. Oh,
This
there
is
are gears in here, of
this
course.
is proof positive of testament of how our generation never read game manuals.
We
We had
never read the manual.
all right.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say the opinions from the rest of the panel very quickly because we're going to be closing it out. Let's hear from Dan. How do you like this translation of Outrun on the Sega Master System compared to the arcade version?
The arcade version is a different class, but
Mhm.
the Sega Master System is my favorite console version of it, hands down.
Mhm.
I like the Mega Drive version, but
Mhm.
I think the way that they've miniaturized some of the sprites slightly really works well and makes it
Mhm.
really playable. And in comparison to Rad Racer, I think this is
Mhm.
a completely different class of game.
Mhm.
I think Outrun it's tighter, it's faster, it looks better, and
Mhm.
one of my favorite things about it is you get to select from all the different soundtracks that you can listen to,
Ah, yeah, that's true.
and it just it captures that vibe of traveling across America, which
Mhm.
you know what I mean. That kind of that's why you don't have an opponent. You're just meant to
Mhm.
be blasting down out somewhere sunny with your missus. So
Mhm.
yeah, for me, mate, I think Rad Race is a decent game, but
Mhm.
I think it controls a bit poorly, and
Mhm.
it doesn't capture what Outrun does with a sense of speed and
Mhm.
sense of freedom.
Okay. Let's hear what Viraj has to say.
Very quickly, I think this is an amazing port for the
Mhm.
time. I mean, obviously, this was created by Yu Suzuki in the arcade
Mhm.
to be an
Oh
experience
yes, Yu
simulator,
Suzuki. Mhm.
and that genius created Space Harrier, Afterburner,
Mhm.
Outrun, Super Hang On.
Mhm.
This is a very good port for what it is.
Mhm.
Compared to Rad Racer, which is what we're comparing it to,
Yes.
again, it's a superior game. Hands down, it's a
Mm.
better game, and that's really all I want to say on it.
All right, very cool. Let's hear a very quick opinion from JDM. I know JDM was more familiar with Highway Star or Rad Racer, but
Yeah.
from what you can see, JDM, how are you liking the visuals of Outrun for the Sega Master System?
I played this a few hours ago. That's the first time I played Outrun on the
Mhm.
Master System because I played the later games, the one
Mhm.
on the PS2, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
Sir
it
JDM saw me
looks.
playing this, and now that he knows what things not to do and what to do, he was able to play
I,
it without any problems.
yeah, I
Yes, JDM.
actually did the shift gears when I played this, but I went too fast. I bumped into the signs and the trees there, but the environment looks great for its time, and it's much
Mm-hmm.
more better than Rad Racer. So it's
Oh,
really
okay.
sad I haven't
Mm-hmm.
played it when I was young.
But
But
Ah, there you go.
very quickly, one thing I noticed about Rad Race is the music cuts out.
Yeah.
It does, yes. I think it's because of the fact that you can select the music when you press up and the B button, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
on the pad. So if you made the mistake of pressing the B button and up at the same time while you were driving, you didn't notice it, the music would either change or cut out. So that's probably what was happening to you,
Okay.
Viraj. All right, and
Okay.
Siebert, last opinion.
Red Racer, I would say it's a decent game because
Hmm.
I played a lot of Outrun back in the days because we
Hmm.
had it's very popular.
In
Well,
the
Master
arcades.
System is not exactly that popular back in the days, but we had that on the arcade here in the Philippines.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
Outrun, Red Racer just came in just later on
Hmm.
the life cycle of Outrun, so I would give it to Outrun. I
Outrun.
played a lot of
Okay.
Outrun in the arcades as well back in the
Hmm.
days.
All right. And in my case, my most recent stream on my channel, Banyagang Native, I did a comparison of Outrun games from the arcade all the way to Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, even Sega Game Gear. I did even the Outrun on the PC Engine. And you'd be surprised, guys. I would give the Outrun game on home consoles to PC Engine. That's my personal opinion. It's because the details and the fluidity of it. My personal opinion was I had to give it to the TurboGrafx 16
Oh,
PC Engine
okay.
version. If you guys want, you can check that out in my most recent stream. All right, we are going to wrap this up. Sad to say, we can't cover the other genres on
Mm.
the Sega Master System versus
Ah.
NES because we just hit the 2 hour mark. But for those of you who stuck around and listened to our opinions, this is the reason why you are retro gamers. We are not just playing through the games that we played through when we were young. We are now discovering different games from different consoles and different parts of the world. So that's the wonder and the beauty of retro gaming. I will toss it back to Joe to close us out. Joe.
You know what? What reminds me of this game? It kind of looks like F Zero for the
F
SNES.
Zero, yeah, that's true.
yeah,
Kinda,
Mm, mm,
kinda.
a
Gameplay
little bit.
wise, anyway.
Yeah. All right, Joe.
Um. Well, thank you guys for all of that. It's only a 2 hour show. We
Mm.
could have extended this a little
Could
bit
have gone.
Ah,
It needs
a little
two
bit
shows. It
more.
needs two shows.
it is two shows at the very least.
It is too short. The time just
No.
went by just like that. But
It's we
we are
enjoyed
getting
ourselves
word from our
immensely.
producers that we, we're running. We're not trying to outrun the clock. Anyway,
Yeah.
outrun. Hey,
Outrun,
Yeah,
hey.
there you go.
true.
to close this show,
Mm,
let we just say this on
mm,
this console wars back of the mid 80s. No? If we are going by with the sales figures, of course, yes, of course, Nintendo has the upper hand. It
mm,
revitalized the gaming industry, but let's not forget all of those noise just mainly in North America. Okay,
mm,
after numerous consoles and games lacking in quality control crashed their market,
mm,
but for the rest of the world, Sega had their share of their territories.
mm,
And to me, it is all based on where you were and what time when the NES and the Master System were the consoles to have. Not all households can afford both, so it was either of the two. And television, magazines, and word of mouth were the ones that we only have as most of information that we got on wishing what system to have because we don't have the internet back then. In the Philippines, where we grew up, Nintendo raised us. For me, it was all that I have known. It was only until I reached my teen years that I stumbled upon another brand, which was Sega.
mm,
For most of the Filipinos growing up as well. But it's not the same for the rest of the world. Of course, it was the other way around. UK, South America, right? Sega had the Sega dominated those regions. What is good about doing this show, ladies and gentlemen, is that Personally, I find great pleasure in finding out the who's and the whats and the where's and the whys of our gaming history. In preparing this show, I wanted to know why Sega didn't do well in our region of the world, why it was more popular in the UK, why it was more popular in South America, why Nintendo had more control over the US, and both Sega and Nintendo during the 8-bit years have their own share of good and bad games. Let's all admit that. But it is the good and the bad that makes our childhood memories more meaningful when we revisit. It takes good and the bad. Nintendo had more leeway in their gaming library because, as Sir Viraj mentioned, they had more contractual lockout with their third-party developers, not producing games for the competition. Sega, on the other hand, had to resort to buying these games from those developers, rebranding them just to avoid a lawsuit coming from Nintendo. That's why there were more notable games for the NES in comparison with the Master System. However, saying that one console sucks or it's not good just because we have no intentions of trying out the games that made that particular console good is unfair and foolhardy. But an opinion is just another still it's just another opinion, no matter how real we say our opinions are. Let's not dismiss the childhood memories and the childhood enjoyment of our fellow gamers. Rather, we should celebrate that there were kids back in the 80s who were fortunate enough to have Sega and or Nintendo to keep them company, right? So thank you guys so much for staying, and I hope you enjoyed this particular episode of our installment of the console wars, the 8-bit era, and let's do our shameless plugs. Sir JDM, where can they find you?
Mm.
Yeah, you can catch me on Facebook Gaming and on Twitch 123 Go here on Facebook and on Twitch 123 Go Retro. I mostly stream around Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do variety of games for um, PlayStation era, PlayStation 2 and onwards. And sometimes I would like to do some Sega games as well. I'm doing random game Fridays, so yeah, maybe I should give this Sega Master System games a try.
Yay!
All
Really?
right, thank you for that, Sir
Yeah.
JDM. And how about Sir Siebert? Where can they find you?
You know what? This is actually what's good about being a retro game collector in general, because everyone, because if you look at these days, kids nowadays are so excited about getting the new PS5 and the games it released. For me, I'm always excited to get hold of a game that I never heard of. Whether it's the NES, the Master System. I'm in the future. I might. I'm looking forward to having one, the Master System. But anyway, both games. Though I'm with NES because it's something that I grew up with respects to the Sega Master System that I'm just getting familiar with just recently. Though I played it through the Game Gear, it's different when you're using the console because of the graphics and all that.
Yeah.
But both systems are actually good. So I may be wearing red NES. It's something that I used to, but it's something that kids nowadays should look as well because both are great systems. So hands down to both of them. And you can reach me at I as a hobby aside from being a collector. I play games a lot. So one of the most recent game I played is from the PS4. It's um, It's Pac-Man, but anyway, I also do mod, so you can check out all my work at Seabird East Retro Games on my Facebook page and here on Timeless Gamers. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Siebert. Oh, so since we're talking about closing remarks, let's go back to Sir JDM. Sir JDM, closing remarks in regarding with the episode.
Yeah. It doesn't matter which console you like, Sega, Sony, Nintendo. As long as you love the game, if you're a gamer, you would really like to try every games that you get your hands to. So just play the games and enjoy.
All right, thank you for that, Sir JDM. How about Sir Dan? Closing remarks and where they can find you.
Yeah, I think what JDM says, what he says there about finding what you like really and what suits your preference. And when you're trying these 8-bit systems, if you do that, you'll realize that the Sega Master System is definitely the better system. And get out there, play them and enjoy them. And I think all the ones that we've gone through today, I mean, we only went through a few comparisons, but it showed a lot of those comparisons were really tight. And it shows that it shows the roots of that console war, and that's the bit I've really enjoyed from the show, because the console war, was, everybody remembers Super Nintendo and Sega Mega Drive, but it's been great to talk about this era and live that build up to that console war. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for that, Sir Dan. And that's correct. This is the dawn of the 16-bit era where everything changed. So it's a good opportunity for us to find out the beginning of the war, so to speak.
Yes.
How about Sir Joel, who lead the charge for this particular episode? Closing remarks, Sir Joel, and where they can find you.
All right. First things first, thank you very much to everybody who was hanging around the chat. Jinko's Gaming Hub, maraming salamat. Thank you very much for hanging around. RJ Ladaleones with the exclamation point notified. Thanks very much for that one. Thank you very much. And Joe Menten of Joe Marat Facebook Gaming page and Joe Marat on Twitch.tv. Thank you very much. And Sir Pao, how could I possibly forget? Sir Pao 24, who sadly could not join us today. He is also part of a Timeless Gamer podcast. And I think Tito Popoy passed by here for a moment. Okay, so my personal take is that I am absolutely joyful for discovering new things that came out before, finding out the new finding out about these games that actually can have a very good comparison between different platforms. I'd say, and I completely agree with everybody who has mentioned things prior to me. Enjoy what you've got. Discover new things, reach out to all those other places that reach out outside of your comfort zone. And you can find me in my Facebook gaming page, Pinoy Retro Game, Joel Baklit, Banyaga Native Pinoy Gamer Abroad, or I'm more frequent on my Twitch.tv channel right now, Banyagang Native. I am planning on continuing my series of video games through the ages. So JDM actually saw my most recent broadcast of Outrun, from the arcades all the way to the different platforms, and how they look and compared to each other. And a little tail ender to there, which I added, was Frogger, from the arcade all the way to different platforms as well. You can see Frogger on the Super NES, on the Sega Genesis, on the Game Boy Color, on the Game Boy Advance, and all the way to the PlayStation 1. So please check out my page. Thank you very much to everybody who hung around and watched our little attempt to educate Filipinos and the rest of the world on the comparison between Sega Master System and Famicom NES. Back to you, Joe.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Joel. And of course, the man who dropped the most knowledge for this particular episode, Sir Viraj, of course.
Viraj
Closing
Katwadia.
remarks and your closing remarks and where can they find you?
Oh, I feel really bad now. I wish we had more time.
Yeah,
There's so much we could talk about. There's so much we could talk about. But look, you'll find me loitering around on the Sega Genesis group. I'm with Dan, so you find me behind Dan. I'm in the shadow. But look, I'd like to thank you all personally for inviting me on the show to talk about that era and my knowledge and share my knowledge with you. One thing I just want to say, because this is purely, I know it says console wars and we're talking about Sega Master System being a better system or the NES being better, whatever you think. look, I hope this gives those of you who are in Manila or in the Philippines an insight that the Master System is definitely an alternative, and you should definitely check out these games that we talked about. Should you wish to know about more stuff, you can just message me on Facebook. I'm always loitering around, and if you want some recommendations on titles for the Master System, because we were literally on the tip of the iceberg, we don't have enough time. I'll happily talk you through it. But it's a wonderful system, and in the wonderful world of emulation, it's so easy to play now. So I hope that this opened your eyes to actually being a really good alternative 8-bit system to play, and it has a vast library of games that I'm sure everyone will enjoy. Thank you again for letting me come on the show again, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Viraj.
We're the ones who are honored, Raj. Thank you very, very much for being here.
It's quite surprising to learn more about the gaming situation from other side of the other side of the globe. To be honest, and we're quite thankful for Sir Dan and Sir Viraj, who shares their gaming situations from that side of the world, and that's a good thing about the show, guys. We got the Americas, we got the Europeans, we got the Asians.
So got the Australian right here.
We got the Australians right here, and that's a good thing about gaming, guys. The way I see it, we live in a campus, but we may be living on different dorms, but we all living on the same campus.
Yes,
which is still gaming. So
we just need to find somebody from Brazil so that he can give us more background.
I know, right?
Yeah, I know.
I believe some of the members on the Sega Genesis Facebook page. We have a few Brazilians there as well.
I only wish we had somebody from the Sega Genesis Facebook group to kind of.
Would be great if the Sega Genesis group would
anyway. Yeah. Anyway, close us out, Joe. Close us out.
There's an episode coming. Nintendo,
right? Well, anyways, guys, just to promote the show, of course, you can catch the archive videos of our show by going to the Facebook page of Timeless Gamer. Just search in Timeless Gamer PRG on YouTube, or by going to the Facebook page of Pinoy Retro Gaming. And for our audio, the audio format of our previous episodes, just Google search Timeless Gamer, and it will be available on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all of that. I'm not gonna name them all of them. It's quite tiring. Anyways. And that's all for today, guys. And as always, our games and bodies might grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain. Hey,
timeless.
This is our season 5 finale, guys. The next one will be season 6.
All right, excellent.
Bye, guys.
We'll see you guys on the next season. All right, enjoy.
Ciao.